We're going to give it 1 minute of just a quick welcome, everybody, to the Grandmaster Blitz Battle Championship final. World Champion Magnus Carlsen, four-time U.S. champion, recent Olympic gold medalist Hikaru Nakamura. I don't really know that any intro is set. We have we spent a lot of time with intro yesterday. You can go ahead and check that out in our archives, detailing everything we expect to happen here. But now it's up to the players, and all we're going to do is sit back like the rest of you and try to provide some context to the most amazing online chess match ever. Robert, are you ready?
I'm absolutely ready. It's going to be a barn burner. These two are ready to fight. We were just checked in with the players. They're ready for the next 3-hour-long battle.
That is right. And just checking real quick before the games start.
Yeah, we just need to make sure everything's in order. No glitches whatsoever. We want these two to duke it out entirely on the board. And, we're going to start with 960 chess. Remember, the first game of every time control is chess 960. It means the pieces are randomized.
It looks like we're not actually live yet. There's some quality issues here. So 1 second.
Oh, let's check it out just to make sure. Okay. Why is it?
Oh, the game has started actually.
You're dropping a lot of frames.
Yeah, we're dropping a lot of frames. But maybe it's going to pick up. It's not getting any worse, looks like.
Okay.
We'll go to the main stream so everyone can see the game for those who are tuned in. I think we are live. I think you can hear us and see us, and I think that the match has started. I'm going to reset the clock to the appropriate time.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a reminder, everyone, the first game of every time control is chess 960. It's a variant where the pieces on the back row all start randomly, but both sides have the pieces on the same squares opposing each other. And as we see in the game already, Hikaru with the white pieces, well, he's fianchettoed his bishop from f1 to g2. It's on that long diagonal, so it applies some pressure. And Magnus goes to blunt that bishop with pawn to d5.
A risky move with the king in the center, always to open the center for all levels of chess players, both beginners and grandmaster alike. Whenever you see the king pawn push forward and there's an opportunity for the center to open up, get ready for some fireworks on the board.
And already I like to move pawn takes d5, and it looks like the queen can infiltrate via f5 once the e-pawn takes.
I was highlighting it before you could say it, partner, and just like that, we're rocking and rolling. Now that I know the show is live and we are not dropping any more frames, let's let everybody see exactly what's going on here. The players are with us. They are zoned in. Hikaru Nakamura already showing us Hikaru Nakamura face number 9, where he leans in and focuses. Magnus, his bedhead is not quite as bad as it was against Alexander Grishuk, so that's nice. He's pulled a haircut together. Maybe he's getting ready for the match, wanted to look good.
Yeah, he seems to be ready right now, rocking on the board. He goes pawn to d4, blocking that bishop that just went from e1 to f2. It closes off the diagonal.
But it opens up the diagonal for the light square bishop, and again, the thing to watch out for is tactics can occur. Bishops are like ninjas attacking things from one side of the board to the next. It also sort of pins down this queen to the protection of the b7 pawn.
And what's funky for white is this knight on h1. You're like, in a regular chess game, how did it get there? Well, in fact, it started there in this one. So the knight will eventually try to find its way out and get a new home. But in the meantime, a move like knight to a5, Danny, for white here, looks very interesting and good. The knight jumping from b3 to a5, well, he started with queen f5. We discussed that before. But the knight to a5 at some point will attack the pawn on b7.
Well, I was going to say, the reason he probably brought the queen to f5 first is because you see there's pressure on the c5 pawn, and there's tactics here. As we've said, the king is in the center. That's exactly where you don't want the king to be as the board opens up. Again, that's for all levels of understanding to take that tip home. And how is this queen going to deal with the c5 pawn? If she comes here, Robert, we got tactics on d4 because that pawn is pinned to the first lady. I expect Hikaru Nakamura to strike first and win this game. I'm already going to call it.
Oh, absolutely, because I don't even see a way for black to defend all of his pawns. If the queen comes to move like d6, and the pawn on b7 is now hanging. So all of a sudden, it looks like black is unable to protect every single loose pawn on the board.
And again, to remind everybody, because we got off to a little bit of a slow technical start, this is the Grandmaster Blitz Battle Championship final. This is World Champion Magnus Carlsen, four-time U.S. champion, online Blitz extraordinaire, Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura. And the starting game here was chess 960. That is a game also called Fisher Random, where the pieces on the back row are just set up randomly, and it's a ton of fun. You can play it on Chess.com, and something really interesting because it sort of puts the players on their heels, regardless of their strength. Everybody's figuring it out from scratch, and because of that, you can see even super strong players like Magnus Carlsen. I don't think we have a stronger player on the planet.
Yep.
He's already completely lost. I mean, to be honest, he's about to lose the exchange. Hikaru Nakamura is going to take care with the knight, which is going to be a fork to the king and the queen.
Yep.
A fork where you attack two pieces at once with the knight, and then he's going to win the rook. And again, I expect Nakamura to be able to take this one home.
Absolutely. I would not be surprised after knight takes b7 if Magnus resigns in a few moves. His position is that lost. And the reason why, as Danny just pointed out, after knight takes b7 with check, the rook is forced to capture that knight on that b7 square, and then white will be up. And look at Hikaru. b4, I mean... We have this thing called Guess the Move, and the winner of the Guess the Move will win $250.
How much you want to bet nobody guessed that move? Exactly.
$200 and a lifetime membership to Chess, diamond membership to Chess.com. And B4 is a move that we definitely did not suspect. And the point was just to loosen up the pawn on D4 now. See that pawn in front of the queen? At some point, that bishop on F2 will be gunning for it. And so right now, it's all Hikaru Nakamura. A move like queen A5 here. Okay, he starts queen E4, keeping the queen in the center. I would have preferred queen to A5. But still, his position is so dominant at the moment that he need not worry.
Reminder, everybody, I just switched to a view where you can see the score, so you know if you're just joining us, you have not missed much. This is the first game in the match. The score is 0-0-0-0. We've got both Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura locked in. As you can see, we have an hour and 25 minutes left in the first portion, which is 5-minute blitz. Then the game gets faster, and then it gets really fast. So if you're here for the whole show, you've made a smart decision in terms of how to spend your Thursday, October 27th. Reminder, I got to thank our sponsors. That's kind of what I'm here for. Indigo Capital Partners, PeopleTalk.ru, and Buron Venture Capital. Their donation, $50,000, made this match possible, the highest ever grossing match. And actually, on that note, let's remind everybody real quick of what the players are playing for, because we got to get everybody excited. That's exactly what this is, the Grandmaster Blitz Battle Championships. We've thanked the sponsors. It's Hikaru Nakamura versus Magnus Carlsen. We know who these guys are. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Two of the most accomplished chess players in history, and this is what they're playing for. This match alone, both of them have already grossed, I think, almost $10,000 throughout this entire match already. But here you're looking at the winner of this match. It's just 3 hours of blitz. That's not the worst I've ever been paid for 3 hours in my life, $4,000. And that's what we're going to be seeing here. So let's jump back to the game.
Yeah, and we see that Magnus got his queen out and captured this pawn on b4. And if we just do a quick material count, white has 5 pawns, black has 5 pawns. The difference in this position is that white has 2 rooks to black's 1. And for that rook, black has an extra knight. And the knight on h1 still looks a little odd in the corner. But look at that black king. Danny, you talked about this earlier. When the position starts opening up, there is no way that black wants the king just in the center. White's king is perfectly safe, all the pieces tucked around it. And now a move like rook to d1 here by Hikaru, and it's played. I just guessed that move correctly. The point is that now d7 is coming.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is I think that we'll probably see Magnus resign quickly just to get to the next game and jump in. This is not a position that's easy to play in. And why did this go so wrong? Well, we talked about the fact that, again, this was a chess 960 position. Things are weird right from the get-go. Don't judge Magnus Carlsen as if any of us have the right to anyway, but don't judge him because, you know what, white can sometimes have a big advantage in some of these chess 960 positions. Even if it's only a slight advantage, it's more than a normal game. Add that to the practical factor that Magnus Carlsen probably has never played the position before starting. Again, a lot of these great chess players, what people don't understand is they rely on pattern recognition and experience. It's not all just genius seeing 50 moves ahead. So he was sort of on his heels to start, a really tough position for the world champion to be in with black in this chess 960 position.
And this is reminiscent of Grishuk against Carlsen in the semifinal. Grishuk got out a quick lead by winning the first 960 game with the white pieces. So looking good for Hikaru. I just want to point to a quick tweet that we have. Nazi Paikidze Barnes, the reigning U.S. women's champion, says, she tweeted, "So excited to watch Magnus Carlsen versus GM Hikaru match today. Thank you, Chess.com, for scheduling it on my birthday." What a birthday
Well, happy
present.
birthday, Nazi. Phenomenal birthday present. You're welcome.
And queen d2. What a move. The
That's
point
a
is
move.
that pawn on c3 is now under attack, but it is also pinned because the rook on c1 barrels down on the king
Right,
on
a
c7.
pin for all the basic viewers just joining us is when a piece cannot move because it would be illegal. There's a better piece behind it. You're not allowed to put your own king in check. So instead, Magnus runs with his king. Here comes the c pawn falling. And again, it's probably just a matter of time before we see that first resignation. A new view here for the fans. We didn't do this last time. Big board view, big cameras. I love it. Love seeing these guys zoned in. We don't get access to the players' emotions and this sort of up close facial expression even in over the board play. It's one of the things that's made this format so exciting.
Absolutely, and as we see the big board here, look at Hikaru's face. He's confident, he's calm, and this is a big win for him to register because it's the first game of the match. Both players could have been a little bit nervous. You don't know.
He got a little lucky getting white, to be honest, right?
It's randomized, right? So with the white pieces, and it's very fortunate. And here he won the first game. The first point is on the board. Hikaru Nakamura leads 1-0.
And on the note of guess the move, we have to point out right now that we have just had a record-setting. I can't even see it so fast. There were so many people playing guess the move. The chat immediately is going crazy on Chess.com. But I'm trying to announce who I can't even get there. This chat there are literally more people watching this. I can't even move our live server fast enough. But all the people playing Guess the Move, if you're wondering how to do that, log on to chess.com/live. And while the games are going, you can make a move on the board, something we're not doing. We're here to educate and talk, so we highlight things. But you can make a move and try to guess what they're playing. The winner of Guess the Move at the end of this match taking home $250 in cash just because we love you, and we're giving away lots of premium memberships as well. So look for announcements by our staff members in both the Twitch chat and Chess.com TV if you're looking for links on how to get involved in Guess the Move. But there were a ton of title players there playing Guess the Move. A lot of people looking to win and try to play like Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura.
And it looks like the winner had 15 correct guesses out of 35, which is
crazy town.
On a test, that wouldn't be the greatest score, but with these players, it's an amazing one. And here we have in the second game, Magnus Carlsen gets the white pieces. This is normal classical chess, not 960 like the first one. And it looks like Magnus is opting for a slow opening. It's called the King's Indian attack, and he fianchettoed his bishop to g2. His king is very safe. Look at the pawn and the pieces around it. Black is aiming to break through at some point, and as we see here, Black has the bishop fianchetto on the opposite side. So look at that bishop on b7 and g2. Keep an eye on those pieces. At some point, they may be barreling down at each other.
Right. They are like ninjas destined for warfare. It's hard to be born that way where you're just destined, but that's what's going to happen. There's going to be battle there. There will be blood. But one of the things Robert just touched on, this King's Indian attack is an opening where the king gets a lot of pieces around it. And if White has his way, especially if Black puts the king over here, what you're going to see is White try to close the position and go for an attack. Now, Hikaru has played a very sort of elusive approach, right? He has not committed this king to either this side of the board or that side of the board. Why is that useful for members of maybe just getting started in their chess career? Well, sometimes when your king hasn't committed, it might make it a little bit tricky for your opponent to know which side of the board they want to attack on. The risk, of course, is that if the king gets in trouble in the center, you may be regretting that decision. But let's see what happens here. E5 opens up the potential battle here, as you touched on earlier.
And it's a very good move because Black was trying to go bishop to a6. Now, the problem with bishop a6 now is the pawn will go capture on f6. So it's going to be a sacrifice, a temporary sacrifice of some pieces. So the bishop will come to a6, hitting the queen. It looks like you have to move the queen, but no, I will capture your knight on f6. If you capture my queen on e2, it's just kind of like dominoes falling. We'll just start capturing some pieces, and White will get 3 minor pieces for the cost of a queen, which is a great trade for White in an open position. Absolutely.
If you notice why the board went a little bit gray, one of the not necessarily issues, but one of the requests we had last time was that in the analysis portion where we're showing you guys moves, let's not confuse what the players are playing and the ridiculous variations we're trying to show you.
Bishop a6 was played.
And he didn't play it. I was just going to say, so anytime you see a variation that makes the board go gray, that means Robert and I are trying to analyze and show you what we think might happen to maybe provide some educational context. So that's just a good FYI and a good quick bug for the developers to note. Every time I click the reset button, it immediately flips the board back to the black pieces. Always fun to do live QA right when we have 20,000 people watching the show. So Queen E3 was played. Magnus electing not to sack. You know what the issue there is? I think that Magnus is so confident that he may get an attack against this king. He wants to keep the queens on the board. So what he's doing, everybody, is saying rather than go here, I'm going to keep the queen on the board. And once this knight moves, I'll slowly inch the queen over to the king side where this guy has to end up, and I'm going to eventually end up with a checkmate attack. Here comes the move we just talked about. This bishop wants to pop into this square, opening up avenues for the pieces, and look for Hikaru's king to come under fire in this game.
Absolutely, and White can also think about a pawn storm over there on the king side, pawn to h4. And the reason why white can go pawn h4 and pawn g4 moves like that is that, as we mentioned earlier, there's so many pieces around that white king, the 2 knights and a bishop. Black has no attacking pieces over there. In fact, black's king side is quite loose in many senses because there are not that many pieces. The knight to f8 is moved to reroute over to g6 potentially, but I always hate knights on g6.
Mikhail Tal once said, with a knight on f8, there is no checkmate. Mikhail Tal also was not the best defender, so hashtag you do the math. No, in this situation, the knight on f8 can be very useful, as Mr. Hess just pointed out, but Magnus playing the moves we kind of talked about. These pieces are going to come toward the king side. Will Hikaru find accurate defensive moves, everybody, or will this game end spectacularly with a mating attack for Magnus Carlsen evening the score? We're going to find out.
Yeah, and it's funny because now queen f4, the move you just kind of highlighted, it immediately threatens a big attack on f7. And now if you're black, you have to protect the pawn on f7. How do you do that? You can move the pawn up 1, which is not a good
Very
move
risky,
because it
right?
opens up your king. Or you can capture the piece attacking the square and capturing the knight on g5. The benefit for white, Danny, is that white will get 2 bishops, right? If we just
not only that, but the absence of that dark square bishop could really tell a tale here in the future that those squares will become weak. Again, that would be because black parted with his dark square bishop.
Absolutely.
So again, every time I reset, the board seems to flip. But I'm going to flip it back, so we're seeing it from the white side, and we're getting exactly the line we talked about. Here comes h4.
Well, h4, black might continue h6.
There we go. Guess the move, right?
Yep, and h6, the idea is that I'm trying to boot the queen away, and if the queen goes back to g4, maybe at some point the pawn e5 will be hanging, and there's some tactics in the air. But
with g7 falling, things are about to get real weird.
Wow, that is a good move. The point now is at h5, I go h6 first. So it looks like my knight is under attack on g6, but after the move pawn to h5, black goes pawn to h6, attacking the queen on g5 and undermining the protection of the e5 square.
A very sneaky point, partner. That's right. So the point is, if you move the knight here, everybody, white would continue with big problems against the king.
Yes.
That's a threat of checkmate if you're keeping score at home. But Hikaru has this intermezzo prepared. That's a move, an in-between move, a move that sort of is surprising in an otherwise series of forced moves for those who don't know the language. And then now this queen would have to move, and suddenly e5 is a problem because we got 2 knights having a party over there. So interesting stuff, very well defensive moves, well-played defensive moves by Hikaru. Magnus says it's time to complete development.
And not a move that Magnus wanted to play. Now the point is that knight on g6 looks a little weird. It doesn't have a great future if not for now capturing on f4. So pawn to h5 is not as big of a threat because Hikaru can go ahead and capture the bishop. So right now, Hikaru is definitely a bit more comfortable. He's moved his knight backwards, and that might seem like a weird strategy. We don't tend to love moving our pieces backwards. But again, there's bishop on b7 and g2.
Yep.
Right now, they're staring each other in the face.
Almost like a good author, we foreshadowed this battle way in the beginning of this book, and there is going to be blood here, everybody. I still think Magnus is in the driver's seat here. Hikaru not happy to have to put the knight here, so he's going to take on f4. But look for the attack to build up. This reminds me of a game we had prepared for a pregame show, but due to some technical difficulties that one of our players was having, we did not do it. The game that we talked about where Carlsen completely outplayed Hikaru in... what was it, in their game where he went for this checkmate attack. This is a game taken from the Leuven, Belgium Blitz tournament that was over the board this year. Knights and rooks, but suddenly watch how Magnus gets the attack going at the last second. Brought in the rook to the 7th rank, ended up checkmating Hikaru in this game in some seriously sassy fashion.
Yeah, he won the knight there because there was checkmate on the board. But if we look at this game, I think black is better, honestly. The pawn on e5, I mean, a lot has just happened in a few seconds there. But the point is the pawn on e5 is more difficult to defend. You have to go pawn to f4, which loosens up some of the squares. And in fact, the black king can easily just come to the center if he wants, and that pawn on h5.
I think black being better is a little bit extreme, but I agree with you that black has survived the worst of it, right? We were just looking at a position where black's king was under attack. Not anymore. But white has a little bit more space on the king side. This pawn structure, if he gets it, we know what that is. That's a grip position. So the reason why that's advantageous for white is pawns that are further advanced are closer to becoming right? A queen. So look for somehow with these pawns, look for Magnus at some point to have a space advantage, maybe create some threats on the king side. But Hikaru, you're right. I mean, aggressively bringing the knight and rook to more active squares than the white counterparts. Maybe you're right. Maybe Hikaru has a better chance to extend his lead than I'm giving him credit for.
Well, I think realistically the position should be objectively around equal. And the reason why is both sides have the exact same material, rook, knight, and 7 pawns apiece. There's not that much infiltration opportunity for both sides because black has a nice setup. All pawns seem very safe. For white, actually the same. All pawns seem to be protected quite well. And there's no real way, at least to my eye, to see how black gets through, and I don't really see how white will get through, unless somehow this king on e2, if the rooks get traded, maybe this king on e2 will try to find its way over to the queen side eventually. But for the moment, it looks like everything is under control, both sides. This should be peter out into, well, actually, I'm speaking too fast. Now the knight's coming to e4, and Danny, you're right. Once the knight goes there, it can go into d6, g4, g5 is an idea. I mean, all these pawn pushes. So
if I had the ability to show you quickly, I would, but I don't want to get away to try to give the viewers some educational stuff and miss the live action. But if we have the opportunity, I will highlight for you why this pawn structure is better for those of you who may actually be curious on what we were talking about. But take a picture of this. This is known as a grip structure for white. Very difficult for black to move any pawns without giving white a pass pawn, which is a pawn that can become a queen. So I think white is still in the driver's seat here. Now, he wants to play c4, Robert, to take away the d5 square, but as you highlighted, that will take away the plan of potentially bringing in his king to the king side. So Magnus zoning in here. Look at that. That's Magnus furrow brow, look number 33. That means he's calculating but confident. And all of these looks and their random numbers brought to you by Nonsense from Danny Rensch. So the question is now, Magnus commits to the king side, and yeah, he wants to use his grip. Will it be enough to have an advantage? There's a big threat here, everybody. Watch out if a random move is played. Watch out for f6. All of a sudden, what we have is the structure I was talking about. We have a 2-on-1 majority where white has serious threats of g5 followed by getting a queenie poo, and that's bad news bears if you're black. So this is seriously something that white has to watch out for. Or black, okay, Hikaru took, but watch out. Here comes the threat of this advanced structure being useful.
Yeah, and it looks like, exactly as you said, Dan, perfectly described that white is trying to get that pass pawn. In fact, even without the pass pawn, if at the right moment, well, now f6 by black. So now e6 check is a protected pass pawn for white. That means that it's a pawn that has no pawn in front of it, so it's going to go get a queen, and it's protected by another one of its friends, another pawn. Yep. So e6 is checked, but it does look a little bit difficult to see how white continues after that. The problem is the king might go up to d6, and then it's not clear how. If you go king e4, you want the knight to be and the king to be on e4 at the same time.
Right, that's hard. They're wrestling each other for that beautiful square there. Clearly, Magnus calculated Hikaru's knight d5 response. And one thing we still haven't talked about in the entire match, we've been focused on the board, is look at the clocks, everybody. Take a look right here. Up on your screen, we have initial time bonus 5 minutes. We have 23 seconds for Hikaru, a minute and a half for Carlsen. That's important because Hikaru Nakamura is known as the faster player, one of the fastest men in the world, right? And in this situation, though, he's down a full minute. If this game ends up turning decisive for the white player, don't look any farther than a reason than at the clock. Hikaru Nakamura is now under some serious time pressure.
But look at the c pawn. So that white knight is going to have to stop the c pawn, and the white king is stuck to the protection of the f5 square.
But at the same time, the black king is protecting this, which means that Carlsen's a pawn may be a very dangerous.
And that's an outside pawn. And the reason why outside pass pawns are so important is that it's much further for the black pieces to run to defend it. Now,
that's right.
And this looks like bad news for
it really does. It looks like Magnus is going to win this game and strike back.
Wait, but it may be a blunder. Because now knight takes knight takes f5 is check. So knight c2 takes knight f5, but that pawn is a7.
Oh no, if a7, knight b5
is get a knight. You could have gotten a knight.
Oh, Magnus could have gotten a knight, but this is probably still winning regardless. Hikaru's going to resign. Now, what we were just talking about there, everybody, if I have a moment to show you, was that in this situation, probably if, okay, again, very, 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 very hard to keep up. The game already started, but the analysis there was that Magnus Carlsen's pawns were basically too much, the e6 pawn and the a pawn, despite Hikaru's tricks to deliver a fork. Again, if you want to see the game, go to chess.com/live and review it yourself. Was not enough to hold on. And just like that, what do we have? We have an even score, partner. For those just joining us, look at that. You have not missed much. Only 2 games have been played. Hikaru Nakamura winning the first. Magnus Carlsen striking back and winning the second. Game on, everybody.
And that's very important because in the semifinal, you and I harped on the fact that Magnus was down 2-0, and that was a really big deficit. He should have lost the third game as well, probably. He just was down a pawn at some point. But now he's tied 1-1. He's definitely, his head is in the match. You know, he can definitely be a bit more confident than he was last time around. So against Hikaru Nakamura, 1-1. Now Hikaru gets the white pieces for the first time in a classical chess game, in the sense of that the pieces are all in their typical
Magnus
squares.
just smiled right there for the first time in the match. I'm not exactly sure what that was. We see Hikaru busting out the Dr. Evil pinky finger right there, which reminds me we've come prepared with all of our buddies depending on the situation. Happy Magnus is here.
Yep.
Mr. Hess.
Yep, happy
We
Magnus.
also have, of course, just in case it goes that way, we have Happy Hikaru right with us as well. They're buddies. I hang out with these guys all the time. Magnus is hilarious. And the jokes that's coming out of this guy. But anyway, we just saw our first smile, and right now we're seeing the Dr. Evil finger by Hikaru Nakamura leave the screen. He's zoned in. That's Hikaru Nakamura look number 11. It's a slightly scrunched up look. Is he confident, or is he disappointed in his opponent? You never know. That's what makes him so great.
Well, look at him. He likes the fact that black is what we call backwards C-pawn. That's what
right.
Magnus has dealt with. And the reason why it's backwards is that all the pieces are going to start barreling down on it, and unfortunately can't move forwards without being captured. So this is what both sides are playing for. White wants to stop the move pawn c7 to c5, and black wants to play that move, pardon me, and white wants to stop it.
And just like as you said that, Magnus takes the risk of playing it. It's time, he says, to prevent my opponent from barreling down. These are details that are sometimes hard for new players to the game to follow. Why do they care so much about pawns? What about the pieces? Well, the pawns are the only pieces in chess that can't go back. Silly, right? But it's important because it means that every time you look at a pawn weakness, this guy who's under fire, he can't do anything about it without the help of the pieces. So you'll look at a lot of minor details at the highest levels are about positional chess, outplaying the weaknesses of the pawns and looking for your opponent to blunder tactically, blunder pieces. So that's just something to note. So right now, Magnus is going to have to defend these two pawns for the rest of the game. But if he does, there are pawns that are also restricting access to the center for squares that Hikaru might want to use. That's sort of the battle we have going here, is what's going to happen with these pawns. Are they going to be weaknesses, or are they going to be used eventually for Hikaru to get access to squares?
And to add some chess terminology to it, these are called hanging pawns. And the reason they're called hanging pawns is exactly what Danny said. They cannot protect one another when they're side by side. And so the point is that white is going to go after them, and look at white's rooks. They're ready to barrel down. But as Danny said, a big problem for white's, the pieces have restricted access. The knight would love to go to c4 if that pawn wasn't on d5. For example, if that pawn ever goes to d4, pawn d5 to d4, if that's committed, then the knight will just jump to c4 immediately and be very happy on that square.
Absolutely, and we're going to see who ends up winning this battle. Both players zoned in. It's a good moment here to talk about the fact that we have Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura Grandmaster Blitz Battle Championship final. We've had about 5,000 more viewers join since the last time I did this. So thank you to our partners, Indigo Capital Partners, People Talk, and Bureau Venture Capital. The score is only 1-1. You have not missed much. This counting down clock represents the total time left in the 5-minute portion. So they have about an hour more of blitz that we're going to be able to learn from, and then things only get more wild from here. Right now, okay, back to the chess. What do we have here, buddy? We have Hikaru preparing to double rooks and do what we've been foreshadowing will happen here. He wants to barrel in on these weaknesses. I like white's position here.
I love white's position. And it seems like the move of Hikaru's Blitz Battle Championship thus far is in queen to f5. His queen seems to love that square, and it makes a lot of sense. It restricts the black pieces. It's going into enemy territory, and at the same time, it's applying pressure to that pawn on d5. So Hikaru Nakamura right now is doubling the rooks in the c file, putting the second rook, shifting it from d1 to c1, and there it's going to just really apply pressure, squeeze against that pawn on c5, and as we noted, if that pawn moves to c4, where it's well defended, the pawn c5 to c4 will be well defended, but then the knight will go from f3 to d4, gaining a new square to use.
Phenomenal point. If this pawn pushes everybody, I'll just go ahead and show it because, hey, we have the ability. We have the technology. Let's rebuild him. Show an example of what would happen if you landed a pony on a square like this. Completely dominant over the board. Knights thrive in positions where they're surrounded by pawns. And this bishop is basically a big Frankenstein, just taller than the other pawns, but not doing too much. So that's something to note about positional chess. Again, when a square becomes open, like I said with the pawns, again, for beginner, oh, look at that. Hikaru Nakamura, right as I said it, he trapped his own queen. Robert, you missed it. He trapped his own queen?
I mean, that's just, that's going to be absolutely heartbreaking for Hikaru.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just bring up that game because I was talking about stuff, and I like, for some reason the game is not showing. Another good bug to report in front of 20,000 viewers is that right now, when I was making moves as a presenter, this game is active. As you can see the time, everyone please note it, but there's a bug here. I'm going to hard refresh and bet that fixes it. Bet that fixes it. And we should be able to see the game now as soon as it loads up. Give it a second, everybody. And there it is. So sorry for missing the opening. We see Magnus Carlsen repeating the King's Indian attack, a slightly different approach with the queen coming to a4. But hopefully everyone is making note of those issues there. Now, okay, so here Hikaru is still having to deal with the problem with this pawn coming to e5, and a similar thing we saw in the last game where Magnus launched a kingside attack and won. But let's highlight the fact that we now have a one-game lead, right? So Magnus Carlsen came out slow against Sasha Grishuk, and that ended up backfiring. He was down 0-2. Okay, he eventually won. How much did it backfire? Here he's not repeating that mistake. In our pregame talks, Robert, you and I highlighted that Magnus needed to get out of the gate faster because Hikaru Nakamura is probably the favorite in bullet. Right now, Magnus heard our call. He probably watched our pregame show, let's be honest. And Magnus is ready. Look at that confident sip of water. You know Magnus is confident, everybody, when he's lifting his eyebrows and his head is in his palm. This is body language you'll see over the board. And it's body language we get a front row seat to during the Grandmaster Blitz Battle Championship.
And the more we talk about this match, and look at this king is now an F8, means you can no longer castle. Once you move your king, it is impossible to castle. But what's important is that we keep talking about Hikaru being the favorite in bullet, and I agree with that sentiment. But if we look at the clock right now, we haven't been paying that much attention. Magnus Carlsen has 5 minutes and 10 seconds. More time than he started with because of the 2-second increment per move.
Right.
Hikaru down under 4 minutes. That's plenty of time. Don't get me wrong. But it just goes to show how comfortable Magnus is in these type of structures. And just for everyone watching, these games and the commentary will all be archived so everyone can watch after the match. And during a 3-minute break between the segments, remember there's a 5-minute with a 2-second increment. That's what we're on now. Then there's a 3-minute portion coming up afterwards. And then finally the bullet, the 1-minute section. So they'll have a break, and we can go over some of the key moments from there. So nobody fret too much about missing things. I mean, the action is happening quite fast, and as I say that, Magnus goes into a long think.
Yeah, and the time is going to be even, but that's a good point to point out. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion. Who really is the favorite in this match? We talked about it till we were blue in the face. Everybody has picked. Now, the polls on Chess.com suggested that the fans, the members, by the way, the most active poll we ever had, about 15,000 members voted. The fans voted, and I'll bring up the percentages here. Magnus Carlsen will win in a close match, was about 7,000 of the votes, so more than 50% of this poll went in Magnus's favor for a close win. So we'll see if the members are right.
And maybe it's because in the semifinal matchup, Carlsen had the fewest games played with just 24, while Nakamura played 32, which was the most in the GM Blitz Battle Championship. So far, it looks like in this game, well, I don't like Hikaru's king on G8, but at the same time, he's very defensive. I mean, I mentioned this as we discussed in the preview yesterday, and in Chess Center, Hikaru Nakamura is one of the most resourceful defenders ever. Mm-hmm. When he gets in trouble, especially in blitz, he sees things very quickly. And right now, it looks very awkward. His rook on h8 is kind of trapped.
Almost chess 960-ish.
Exactly. It's entombed by the king on g8. You can only go to h7, which is not really a great square. It does protect from sacrifices with bishop takes h6, which is nice. And now the knight will come out to g6 and hit his bishop on f4. So black is trying to unravel, and we'll see if it's enough to survive this one.
Interesting. In the last game we saw on this line, remember, Magnus was pushing. Hikaru simplified, went into a knight ending that he eventually got outplayed in. And we'll see if the story here is one that ends in the middle game for this king and all these pieces over here, or if, again, Hikaru is able to defend and head toward the endgame. Quick shout-outs to everybody getting involved. Thank you to all 17,000 of you on Twitch and lots of people on Chess.com. Want to remind you to get involved in the hashtag on Twitter. If you tweet something fun, we'll read it. Hashtag BlitzBattle, hashtag BlitzBattles. Hashtag Chess TV. There's a lot of hashtags we're tracking. In fact, if you're using the new Chess.com, and if you don't know that you are, just type Chess.com/switch. You'll actually see that Twitter is embedded right in the chat, a really cool feature that we just added to Chess.com/TV, so you can tweet and see your stuff right there. What's going to happen here? The queen relocated with a clear threat of h5 to kick this pony. Hikaru's a little frustrated right now. We see him leaning in. It's not quite angry, Hikaru. It's a little bit
it's quizzical.
Dejected and quizzical, and again, I would classify that Hikaru Nakamura look number 27. Sort of a rare sighting, right, of that animal. But here we go. We have...
He went pawn to h5 to kick the queen back to an awkward square on h3 where it's not involved in the attack. the big compromise that he's made is that now the g5 square is vulnerable. The bishop can go to g5 now for white, trying to trade those bishops, and then the knight will infiltrate. Now, but that queen on h3 is so misplaced.
Really out of play. And not only that, c4 seems really useful. If this bishop can land here, we see that Hikaru trying to slowly unravel his pieces. And look at that. The queen comes to h1. I bet nobody guessed that move. That's a battery, which is a situation where you have a queen and a bishop, or a queen and a rook lined up on one line. That's called a battery in chess, like a battering ram. So look for some potential firepower there. Hikaru will have to be aware of tactics whenever he's facing a battery.
But quite honestly, I don't believe in it. I think the move bishop to c5 now, for example, rerouting the knight to e7 at some point will be nice. You do have to be a bit careful because of that battery. There might be some kind of ideas where you remove the knight from f3 and then attack on that diagonal. But for now, I think Hikaru is doing quite all right. It's, you can consider taking on f4. It seems like Hikaru has not wanted to do that, capturing the bishop. Usually we like two bishops, right? In open positions, but that bishop on e7 is a little bit, it's not. You can go to c5, but it doesn't have the greatest feature. And a move like knight takes f4 allows g takes f4, which might open up the g file for a potential attack, and the pawn on f4 can go to f5. So
it's dangerous, but it's also dangerous, but it's also balanced. I think probably the biggest takeaway from this position right now is the time. We look at Hikaru Nakamura once again, nearly a minute and a half behind on the clock, and that's not Hikaru Nakamura chess. If you look at how he won the Grandmaster Blitz Battle matches against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and Pentala Harikrishna, and boom, we're blundering the h5 pawn, or no, we're allowing it. Hikaru purposely allowing the pawn. He was in a think, closing his eyes. He sees the board just as well in his head. He decides that he needed to sacrifice that pawn in order to untangle, which, it puts Magnus Carlsen in the confident driver's seat with head in palm. But again, I'm just going to come back to the time. The time so far has suggested to me that Magnus is controlling the match, because Hikaru Nakamura, he usually plays faster when he's in control. Though that said, look at what's going on in this position. Suddenly, the e5 pawn is impossible to defend, Robert, despite the hanging of the h5 pawn. Hikaru has sort of flipped the script a little bit. This bishop seems a little useless, like a big old pawn just sort of stuck in the middle here.
Yeah, this knight is going to go to c5 and d3.
And look at that dejected look right there. He threw his hand in the air because he is not happy. But look at that, and now he's shaking his head. He says, I'm up a pawn in this position, but I'm not happy with the decisions I've made because Black is getting control over what really matters.
And a very important point to note is that we're heading potentially towards an endgame. And in an endgame, you're up a pawn sounds great, but with the 4 pawns against 3 on the king's side, you actually cannot create a pass pawn, which is essential in the endgame because there's doubled pawns.
The more I look at this position, the more I feel like Hikaru's sacrifice of the h5 pawn was rather brilliant, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it's a move. How often do you give up a pawn with check and celebrate about it, right? But as Robert just said, look at these 4 pawns. Yeah, there's 4 versus 3, but tell me if they're useful, right? Oh. And then you look at the position and on the queen side and the control that Hikaru gained to these light squares. And suddenly, maybe Hikaru's shaking his head. He's angry that he's going to have to give up a draw. Oh, Magnus says, no thank you, sir. I want more than just a piece. I want Bob Barker. I want the whole thing, baby.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out where Black should go now because there are going to be some threats of knight f6 check.
Followed by mate, right?
Trying to sacrifice and get to, as you would say, Mate Town, USA.
That's right.
But unfortunately, it looks like it's going to fizz out to a draw. I shouldn't say unfortunately. It's been a very dynamic game. But Magnus has offered a draw, in fact, and Hikaru will accept.
Interesting stuff, I guess, from a practical perspective. Look at Grandmaster Georg Meyer active in the Guess the Move. Go play Guess the Move, everybody. Although I would put money on Georg Meyer to be, that's number 1 in German, 2,700 rated Grandmaster, everybody.
Yeah. And I just want to give a shout out to a tweet that we just saw. Someone, @Jord_call said, I'm skipping work for this. Totally worth it. #
All those of you who did not skip work for this, I'm going to go Ferris Bueller on you and remind you that life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around every once in a while, you just might miss it. Sometimes you call in sick to go to the Cubs game. Sometimes you make up a lie and get everyone to donate a bunch of money for your disease, # Ferris Bueller, and you get to watch the Blitz Battle. So mistake on you for missing this live while you watch it in replay. And they're all like, everyone watching this in replay in the future right now is like, he's right.
Yeah.
I really should have called it.
And, we're off to our fifth game here. 2.5, 1.5. Magnus Carlsen has a 1-game lead. It's too early for a single game lead to mean anything. I mean, of course, it's nice to be ahead on the scoreboard, but it's a long, long match. So a lot of play left. And look at this knight a6 move played. It allowed white to capture on a6 with that bishop, which would have doubled the pawns on the queen side. But it looks like Hikaru likes his bishops more, and he just put, again, there's a little battery action. Usually the battery, and look at Hikaru just looks, he's thinking with his ear. You missed Hikaru face.
I missed Hikaru face. That's number 18. That's a rare sighting. It's like a wallaby in the wild. That's a rare sighting right there. Hikaru Nakamura, number 18. That's an ear tug almost, right?
Yeah.
It's like let's get the baseball signs going. Your wife is having a baby. No, seriously, that was funny. But one of the things about this structure we highlighted last time was that the c pawn was the big part of the deal as far as what Magnus Carlsen was doing. You remember he supported c5. Here it's a little bit of a different tale, right? White is bringing pieces to the king side, focused on eventually striking in the center with e4 to get big control over the middle of the board. But there's weaknesses potentially on e3. One of the ideas behind c5. If Hikaru took it, all of a sudden we got problems on e3. So the big issue is that Hikaru has to figure out a way to justify the idea in the center without letting black's pieces come to life. I kind of like c5 by Magnus. The more I look at the position, I'm kind of liking the transition for black here.
Yeah, c5 was a nice move. It gained some space. Now pawn to c4 is definitely a possibility. The problem with pawn to c4 is it allows white to retreat the bishop and then go pawn to e4 himself. And he's going to be pushing forward in the center.
Plus, always remember, whenever you push a pawn, I highlighted that basic ridiculous thing for beginners in the beginning. You can't go back. So d5 is also now under fire permanently because the c6 pawn is no longer there. Look for those features to play a part down the road as tactics start to get messy in the middle of the board.
And here, move like rook a to e1, shifting the rook to the center. Normally, we like to move the rook closer to that square with rook f to e1, but the point is, with that rook on a to e1, at some point white will go e4, and if you take with the f pawn, look at the queen and rook barreling down the f file.
Yep.
So,
nice, Nigel. I know your name's not Nigel, but sometimes I just want to give you compliments in different languages.
Absolutely.
Australian is not a different language. I understand that.
And it looks like this opening that we see here, this Nimzo Indian defense, is the same variation that Naka blew that famous winning position in Zurich when he was completely won against Carlsen. In fact, we used that in some of our promotions when he's slapping the pieces off the board. So he probably does not have fond memories of this opening against Magnus, but here I do like his position. b4, very powerful move.
A very
the
nice
idea is
move.
it looks like it gives up a pawn because so many black pieces were attacking b4.
Magnus doesn't even want it.
He doesn't want it because it would open the a file for that rook on a1.
That's exactly right.
That would have been a bit of an issue. So instead, Magnus reverts to playing c4. And we, as you talked about, now that pawn can't move backwards, and we're like bishop to c2 and e4.
The d5 pawn is under fire. It's strange, right? We saw Magnus win the game as black the last time the two players had this position, although now, I mean, okay, the game is early, but it looks like white is in control. Quick shout out to an awkward and kind of weird treat. Professor Patrick McGee on Twitter using our hashtag said he hasn't seen so much pressure on the weak king since the abdication crisis of Edward VIII in 1936. You just went way above everybody's head, buddy, but you got your tweet read on Chess.com TV. So
that's awesome.
The fans are watching. This is fun. He goes to F1, Robert, instead of C2, where maybe it goes this way. You like that idea? I guess it keeps a little bit of an eye on the pawn structure here, but things are weird. I mean, here comes e4 for Hikaru. Look for tactics on the rook and the queen. Magnus wasting no time looking for counterplay on the queen side, though. And yeah, just like that, hashtag guess the move. What's going to happen here?
Well, the bishop actually is well placed on f1 because e4 would have allowed d4. Now, for example, if d4 now, the pawn at c4 is hanging.
That's right.
If the bishop were on b1 or c2, that pawn would have been protected. Now black would have been menacing past pawn.
Very good point, partner. Very good point.
So I think, look at Hikaru, a little smile. He doesn't want. He's hiding it now, and now he's. We have four-headed Hikaru.
We have four-headed Hikaru. Four-headed Hikaru is also something we don't see that often. It's actually a GM Blitz Battle special because it only happens on webcam. But he's leaned in and focused. That's what it means. We have 48 minutes left in the 5-minute portion if you're just joining us, and the tactics are getting wild. We
don't even know what to do here because you have to take with a knight on e4, I imagine.
For sure. Here comes the rook takes, I think.
The rook takes me a bishop to f5, and now the rook is under attack. You've developed.
There's got to be tactics here.
I'm guessing the move here.
You're guessing the move, and Hikaru shaking his head saying, why am I just missing an obvious tempo move for black? A tempo move, everybody, is when a lower valued piece attacks a higher valued piece. So a bishop is worth 3, a rook is worth 5. Now, not all tempo moves require you to safely retreat, but for beginners, normally, if you attack a higher valued piece with a lower valued piece, that's sort of setting the tone for the game. You're gaining a tempo and you're forcing your opponent to deal with a threat.
And I don't really see a good move for Hikaru here because now the b4 pawn is hanging for free. Queen takes b4 seems completely.
You know what's funny though is even with all that though, I still feel like there should be some way to simplify if you can force pressure on the e file pin, that bishop not being able to move because of tactics.
I'm just not seeing bishop d4 now is a great tactical shot. If bishop d4, oh, I missed it.
And Hikaru just resigns quickly, really dejected with himself, down 2 games in the match now, and he's lost in this. You know, it's not the exact same line, but he's now lost in this structure that we saw where we got that c5 extension, the hanging pawn's a similar game to a few games ago, and he's down 2 games. Magnus lifting his eyebrows, kind of like, well, what did you expect, I guess? Magnus says, right now I'm happy with my 2-game lead. Hikaru needs to focus. I'll make a quick point about the headphones, not because any of the viewers care, but some of the stronger chess players might be wondering what the rules are there. A gentleman's agreement between the 2 players allowed both of them to use headphones and listen to music, even though it wasn't our rules that we prefer that to not happen. Not something we enforce very highly. The future of worrying about whether or not someone's using assistance is really based on statistics anyway. I don't think either Magnus Carlsen or Hikaru Nakamura is looking for anybody to tell them anything. If anything, they usually remind me in our pregame calls, how quickly can I mute you, Danny, so that you can do your thing and I'll do mine. They're not interested in listening to us.
Not at all. In fact, we would hurt them far more than we'd help them. But you can play Guess the Music. I have no idea what they're listening to.
Yeah, let's play Guess the Music. I've told Magnus that we will be asking him what he's listening to on the spot. I said hashtag please don't say Coldplay. But no, somehow Hikaru Nakamura, we have lost his call. Not exactly sure where he went. We will be adding him back soon. You can see his...
I think after another loss, he wanted to hide his face for a little bit.
Maybe he wants to hide his face because he's just that frustrated. We'll see. But I don't think that's the case. We will try to add him back in just a moment. But for now, since we're missing Hikaru's face, I guess we'll bring back our faces. We know how much you guys want to see action there. All right, so what's happening here?
It looks like Magnus is trying to break through on the queen side when pawn to b4. It looks like a pawn is hanging, right? Bishop on f8 and pawn on c5 attack b4.
Absolutely.
But the problem is that open c-file will be disastrous for black. So if c4, now bishop takes,
there would have been a queen coming in. So that means Hikaru's in a little bit of trouble in terms of how to deal with the threats. Did not have time to gobble up that b-pawn. What's the evaluation overall in this position? We're going to get a battle on the c-file. Looks like white has to be a little better here because of the space gained and sort of the tempos being gained. What a strong move.
Yeah, because at bishop d6 now, the problem is pawn to a5.
And Hikaru Nakamura will lose a piece. That move threatens bishop to c7, everybody, trapping the queen on b6 and forces what is just not an ideal move, right? It forces Hikaru Nakamura to retreat with the queen. Although, I guess it could have been worse there, right?
It definitely could have been worse. I was wondering if instead of queen to d8, perhaps Hikaru could have went a6. And a move you don't really think about it, given the situation, but it seemed like it was possible to try to give the a7 square for the queen and then unravel that way. But, I mean, this makes a lot of sense. It's not like... Usually, that's why rook a2 is a great move. Usually you are concerned when a rook is barreling down on a queen on an open file. I was about to say that, it's a queen facing another queen, which is not that big of a deal. But now rook a2 coming to c2 will be quite dangerous for black to deal with, especially because that queen on c8 doesn't really have moves. So in the meantime, black can try to castle and then move the queen over to e8, because the e8 square will be vacated, right? If you castle, the queen can run over to e8, but you're very cramped. And that's the big plus in white's position, is that black is especially cramped. And white is definitely quite a bit better.
Yeah, in fact, it's hard to see how he's going to deal with the threat of the. I mean, it's not the queen being trapped, but whatever the tactics are. We talked about a battery, everybody. That's when 2 pieces are lined up on the same line, and Magnus Carlsen preparing to use a battery. You know, like he means it on the C file. He's going to shake what his mama gave him, and things are going to get weird over here on the queen side. Not exactly sure what Hikaru can do here. Suggestions?
I think you might have to bite the bullet and castle and move your queen over to e8. I mean, it doesn't look fun, but I don't really see a direct way for white to take advantage, right? So we castle, we get our king out the way, and then the queen is a square. So, another thing is there actually aren't great discoveries with that bishop, right? Like, even if you have 2 moves in a row, rook in your castle, rook c2 is coming, of course.
Right.
And if the bishop moves, and there he goes.
Right, exactly. Where's the next move for the battery? I guess Carlsen will show us what the next move is here in a moment. But that's a nice move, 98, a good defensive maneuver if Hikaru Nakamura can weasel his way out of this bind. Not the best opening choice, clearly, from black, but...
So I was wondering if bishop d8 here is now possible.
You're going to allow something like bishop here?
And I'm going to take it.
You're going to sack the queen?
I'm sacking my queen for the bishop and the rook, and I think that's enough compensation given the
Well,
position.
enough compensation to be clearly worse, but yeah,
I don't mean it to be better. I mean enough compensation to fight for, have better chances of fighting
exactly,
for a draw.
Exactly.
That's important to note, is that sometimes when you are worse and it's positionally worse,
right,
it's oftentimes helpful to go to a slightly materially worse game, but getting a much better position.
That was not and he's going to go for what you just talked about, I think, because knight f6, allowing the knight to come to e5, just reminds this queen that she has no place else to go, and now Hikaru deciding he likes your idea of potentially sacrificing. Yeah, those making comments in the chat. We have lost the camera of Hikaru Nakamura trying to reconnect it. He has not transformed himself into a tiger. He may be a transformer or an animagus if you're a Harry Potter fan. What in the world? Baby girl.
Queen b8, bishop c5, going after the rook.
He's going after the rook the old-fashioned way, right? A little bit of pickle tickle there.
Look at that.
he's taking on b6 and
this is actually a great way for Hikaru to unravel here, because now if a takes b6, which is what I suspect is that if a takes b6, well, actually maybe here the move pawn to a6 is what Magnus should play. And the reason why pawn to a6 might be powerful is it opens up the c6 square and allows the knight or the queen to infiltrate. If pawn takes b6, the bishop will just capture, and here he goes pawn to a6. I'm guessing the move real well right now.
Yeah, give the people a chance, Robert. The funny thing here is that if Hikaru weasels his way out of this, it'll be a huge, just kind of psychological step in the right direction, given
Absolutely.
He's lost 2 games in a row. And again, the thing I'm drawing as the most important thing right now is that the time advantage for Magnus Carlsen is suggestive of things not going Nakamura's way. He's the faster player. He wants to prove it, and he's not being able to do it. Will this be a tale of the entire match as we get into the blitz, and what happens in bullet? Will that remains to be seen. But right now, Magnus is in the driver's seat on time.
And pawn takes. Oh, he went queen c8 first. Is a move. I don't understand that move, Danny. Here, if now knight to d6. Knight d6 protects the bishop on d8, right, because it opens up the rook. And now turns knight takes b5, protecting the rook on a6. Oh, but queen to b8, that's the big... No, that's what I'm saying. Knight d6.
Right.
If you have queen to b8, you're hitting rook and knight.
And then knight takes b5.
Or, knight takes b5.
There's a move knight to c6 coming that maybe... Hikaru... No, look at that. Magnus agrees with you.
Knight c6, bishop c7.
He just shook his head.
Knight c6, bishop c7. Look at this. Knight c6, can you put on the board for a second here? Bishop c7, knight e7 check.
Winning on the board, #Matetown USA. That would be sweet. Now, Magnus is still dejected, though. We saw him shake his head, and he doesn't do that lightly. He didn't go for this, but I don't think knight c6 was forcing bishop. Exactly. I was thinking Hikaru would just play rook d7. So Magnus still in the driver's seat. This queen is annoying, and there are tactics that can lose the game on the spot.
I'm not so sure he's in the driver's seat. His queen looks pretty trapped.
Magnus shaking his
head. He's
head.
down 2 pawns. So now a move like rook to a8. The idea of going a5, a4...
Just running this pawn till kingdom come is what's about to happen.
I don't care about my pawn on f7. The pawn on f7 is meaningless.
Yeah, Hikaru agrees with you.
I think I'm winning guess the move.
If you're not a part of the guess the move, Robert, although we love your confidence. The point is that something has gone terribly wrong here if you're Magnus Carlsen. He was dominating out of the opening, up a queen, the pressure on the c-file. But as you highlighted earlier in the match, Nakamura... One of his trademarks is getting out of lost position.
Yep.
Right? Very resourceful player. One of Carlsen's trademarks too, to be totally honest.
Yep.
They're both incredibly resourceful. But I think that if Hikaru even draws this game, it's sort of a moral victory.
Absolutely.
And if he wins this game, it is more than a moral victory. It's whatever. I don't know. Insert what it is. It's a victory scoreboard, right? What's going to happen now, though? This was a nice move because it prevents a5 without allowing rook takes b6. If you win my knight, I win your knight.
Well, that might be okay because the outside passed pawn, we've talked about this before, it's very important.
What happens? I think Hikaru is probably calculating lines like this right now. The evaluation is, will my pawn tell the tale, or will I regret having given this rook the b pawn? So Hikaru is probably calculating such lines, and several moves. He decided he didn't want to go for that. Switches things to the c file to go for some back rank check ideas, and now he's launching the attack against Magnus'
How do you protect
king.
the knight? Knight d2 is coming next move. I don't see a single way to defend that knight. I think you just knight
the way
takes
you protect the knight is you get the king out of dodge, and then you look for counterplay over here. I think you're going to see rook takes g7, followed by some swindle stuff, But wow, what a comeback by Nakamura in this game. I mean, seriously, to win this game as black will be we were looking at a 3-game deficit potentially.
And Nakamura has never faced a 3-game deficit in the GM Blitz battles. And for those of you asking about Nakamura's webcam and why he's not...
He's just confirmed to us something's wrong with Skype, but we can't ask him to troubleshoot it while playing Blitz. I'm going to ask him to do his best. Okay.
He's 33 seconds left in this game. We will get it fixed, everybody. Let's, he's still playing his chess. He's still doing well, but he'll get it back running soon, hopefully. And on the board right now, that passed a pawn, I mean, how do you stop it? You can take all the pawns. Oh, so right now, Magnus is trying to go knight takes d5, followed by knight f6, and checkmate rook g8 mate. Now, that's a ridiculously long story and is not actually going to happen, but that is an ideal situation for Magnus. Now, the pawn can just roam to and he went a4. And Hikaru has 19.2 seconds left. Now, the 2-second increment will mean that he probably will not lose on time. But right now, Magnus is getting a lot of pawns.
Way too many pawns, unless Nakamura comes up with the queen. Trying to adjust the camera angles there, keeping our players' faces. We want the stars to be seen by the players. So apologies for the technical shuffle buffle there. But
there might be 5 pawns for a rook at the end of this.
Because Magnus is clapping. He says, congratulations, Hikaru. I don't know what he does, but you know what I love about, I mean, seriously, if you're out there, chess fans, how awesome is this? When was the last time Magnus Carlsen clapped over the board versus Sergei Karyakin, right? I mean, the thing about this environment is you really get the players in a comfort zone, and you get to have an intimate view into how they really feel about their chess moves.
And just to show you, the points after knight a2, it looks like it stops the pawn, but after knight a2, rook b2 check,
boomtown.
King takes f1, and he resigned. And for the reason why, I was going to show you why, is after king f1, rook takes a2, and even if the rook takes b6, you just move your rook over and the pawn roams free to get a queen.
There's just no way to prevent the pawn from becoming a queen. And that is more than a moral victory there for Hikaru Nakamura. Magnus is mad. That was a huge turnaround. And Nakamura, again, if you look at things just a few moves ago as we were talking about, this was just Carlsen in complete control of a queen and somehow swindled himself into overextending and overestimating his chances. Not sure what's happening here. Waiting for the rematch there.
I'm not sure what's happening, but a nice win by Hikaru, who, he made it through. I mean, at some point he was just so much worse. He was pretty much lost. The engines would definitely tell us that's the case. So. New game is starting. We're gonna. Hikaru said that he hopes his webcam is not dead for good. We're trying to talk to him and make sure that everything is okay, logistically speaking. And
double checking everybody that all things are fine, all things are good.
Yeah, So it just looks like. There's still time left in this segment. 5 minutes and 2 seconds. We still have 34 minutes left of the segment, so a number of additional games shall be played. Here we have Hikaru and Magnus starting again. Hikaru with the white pieces down 3.5 to 2.5 thus far. And, it looks like Hikaru is ready, and he has his webcam about to be ready as well, but, hopefully he gets everything under order and the chess gets underway, because
the chess seems to be underway.
The chess is very much underway.
Perhaps it was a bug there where I had to refresh. Yes, indeed. The chess is underway. Sometimes we seem to have an issue where...
Well, probably so many viewers watching the game, and just, it's a lot to handle. But, so we see Magnus retreating the bishop in this Nimzo Indian defense with the black pieces.
And we have I apologize for the troubleshooting there. We're just trying to figure out exactly what we can do to get both players back on camera where they belong, and I'll let you continue to do the commentary here, buddy.
All right, well, we see that Hikaru's fianchetted his bishop to g2, the point being to put some pressure on this pawn on d5. Black will generally continue with pawn to c6, and the c6 pawn defends d5. White is hoping that his activity will be enough. He has a pawn, maybe a pawn minority attack on the queen side, and that's chess terminology. It means if we look over there on the queen side, White has a pawn a3 and b2, and pawn d4. That's the left half of the board. So White has 3 pawns, Black has 4, but sometimes White can stage a pawn minority attack by going, well, now you definitely can't because the pawn went to c5. What I was going to say was rook to b1, followed by pawn to b4. Now it looks like Magnus again. He's just trying to get rid of this c pawn as quickly as possible, strike in the center. If you take on c5 with the pawn, once again, this bishop takes c5 and the pawn e3 is a bit weak and hard to deal with. So, yeah, it looks like Magnus really is going back to this idea every game with striking.
And you know, the thing is, if Hikaru Nakamura doesn't win this one as White, it might be time to rethink things, right? I mean, you're looking at a situation where he has repeated this opening now, for those of you just joining us, several times. Magnus has only had 1 game, but 2 of those victories, for those of you just joining us, came as Black in the exact position you're seeing. Sorry, not the exact, but the same variation. So this idea, this variation of the Queen's Gambit, of the Nimzo Indian, is something that Hikaru Nakamura may be trying to repeat, for those of you who know these players well and follow them over the board, because he got a winning position against Magnus Carlsen at the Zurich Invitational a couple years ago, though he went on to blow that winning position. Maybe he feels like there's something in this line he's not quite getting, but the results say that Magnus is very comfortable here. 2 of his victories in the 3.5 score you see there, everybody, have come from winning this position as Black, which is... So again, I would say it's time to either come up with something or switch gears if you're Hikaru Nakamura.
Yeah, he keeps struggling in this opening. I just want to go away from chess for just a second here. We had a great tweet by Simon Williams, beloved Ginger GM. He goes, GM Hikaru is not seen on camera anymore. Rumor has it he has substituted Sergei Karyakin in. That's hilarious. It's a nod to the upcoming World Championship match in New York between Magnus Carlsen and Sergei Karyakin. And also, I want to give a shout out to Nualita. I might be butchering the pronunciation of your username on Chess.com for leading the Guess the Move with 113 out of 234. So doing quite well there in Guess the Move. And as we get back to the board, we see that Hikaru has put his pawn on g4. Now, we often tell players not to do such a move because it weakens our king, but as we see around this king, there's a bishop and 2 knights. The king is very well defended. There aren't black pieces coming to attack it, and so it is a move that gains space. It limits that bishop on c8. It kind of blunts it, and potentially this knight will jump into f5 at the right moment. So it looks right now like Hikaru with more space probably enjoys this position quite a bit, but as we've said time and time again, he struggles against Magnus Carlsen just in general, but also in the specific opening. So, yeah, here Hikaru has to prove that he has something going for him in the position. A move, I mean, maybe a move at some point, knight to h5 is tempting, but that opens up the queen. So I don't really want to do that. You can capture and go queen h4, and in fact, you might just get yourself in big trouble immediately. So you have to time that correctly.
The balance here, again, everybody, is you know, White has the pieces on the king side, and hopefully that's going to amount to something before you see this c5 move turning into activity on the. That's not going to work.
I think we'll have to just stop it and redo it. But for now, knight to b5 is an awkward-looking move. But the point is that now that it attacks the pawn on d4, and the knight is actually quite safe on b5. You move like queen to e2, will run into trouble because at some point the bishop will come to a6, and you don't want to line up a bishop with a queen. That's not good for White. And in fact, queen e2 blunders both the knight on f4 and the pawn on d4 at once because the rook on e8. So queen e2 is not a reasonable move.
Not a reasonable move. There's a pin here and a good thing to watch out for. But the position is getting eerily similar to something we've seen earlier already, where Magnus Carlsen has gone on to win once he's established c5 safely on a tactical level. Look for bishop a6. Look for the b file to be used by Black. If Black's pieces come to life here, Nakamura needs to come up with something against the weak D pawn. We've talked a lot about this pawn structure. It'll be something everyone learns from. Toward
is Hikaru back?
Hikaru seems to be back.
Oh,
no,
that just
no, he is not. And we will.
Okay, we will figure this out. I mean, he had to say his webcam died. Nothing you can do when that good old webcam dies. And it looks like Magnus just grabbed a pawn in the center, and I mean, so what's going on here? Right now, Black has 6 pawns. White also has 6 pawns. White has the 2 bishops for the moment, but one of the bishops is bishop on g2, which is blockaded by his own pawn on f3, so not exactly a promising piece. What is nice for White is at some point the knight will hop over to f5, and on f5, it hits g7 in some variations, maybe launching an attack. It supports a thrust with pawn g4 to g5. That's something that Black will have to look out for, is pawn to g4 to g5, kicking the knight away from f6, gaining space, trying to push that pawn over to g6. And right now, Magnus went bishop e2. So now the knight can capture on e2, and the rook will come down onto e2, and that's going to be a bit of an issue. And
suddenly we've lost both players in a call, and hoping to reestablish that. More technical difficulties than I could have ever asked for.
Yeah,
but
we're just trying to call some chess games here, and
hopefully everybody is still enjoying the show. We still got 20,000 of you watching, and apologies for the issues here. We may just have to stick with Magnus right now until Hikaru gets his stuff figured out. So the main issue for Hikaru right now, continued in the match, is his time management. He's down almost 2 minutes once again, and that can't keep happening against the world's best chess player. And so if he continues to be down on time here, he's going to lose the match in the blitz portion, and he better hope that he can turn things around in the bullet.
Yeah, absolutely. But Hikaru's he's not dead in the water right now. Yes, there's this pawn on d4, which is coming down the board, and there's a connected pass pawn because the pawn c5 supports it. And yes, that knight on b3 is very well placed because the knight there is protected by pawn a4. You can't really kick it. But the good news for Hikaru is now the bishop is out of the box. It was on g2, stopped by the pawn f3. Now g5 and then g6 is a huge threat, and something that Black has to be careful dealing with, because rook takes f3 looks nice, but g5 is coming, and in fact that queen will come to f5 once again. I keep saying that's the square that Hikaru loves on f5, and it sure is. And so Hikaru will try his best to launch an attack, especially considering he might lose a pawn in the process. In fact, queen to g6, Danny, is also a threat now because the bishop on c4 pins the pawn on f7 to the king. So
that's a fantastic point right there, actually, because with the pawn not being able to take, the queen might be coming to g6 with double the fun, right? If the queen gets to g6 and hits f7 and is on the battery on the g file, those are tactics that Magnus should be worried about, and his time management is suggesting he's a little worried about it, now starting to really dive in and think here. For those of you just joining us, again, this is the Grandmaster Blitz Battle Championship Final. The 2 best blitz and bullet chess players on the planet, and we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with the cameras right now, keeping the players on webcam. Slightly frustrated by that. But we're going to try to keep the commentary rolling here, and we still have 2 full hours in the show to go, so don't go anywhere.
And speaking of rolling, White's kingside attack is now rolling.
Yep.
Because rook h5 is a pretty big threat in some circumstances. Bishop to h4 even. Look at that bishop coming into the action.
Yep.
And it's a discovery attack. Once that rook moves, the queen on d8 will be under attack. So right now, knight d6 does nothing. Bishop d5, in fact, is protected by the rook on g5 and attacks the rook on 8. And queen g6 here is another move that you have to be careful for.
Well, and Magnus and Hikaru says, I don't even care about that because I'm willing...
a checkmate attack is coming.
Yeah, rook takes g7 check.
King takes g7. Rook g1 check.
G1.
King to f8. Oh, well,
I mean, we're going to find out right now.
No, he's going to rook. He might even go, yeah.
No, I think rook takes g7, king takes, give the check.
He might
king
double his
runs.
rooks in the g file first.
Maybe just gobble the queen and then continue with the issues here. Rook to g1 check. No, Hikaru says this is good enough. it's a position where even though black has a... Ooh, that may have been a mistake.
I don't really like what Hikaru just did there, honestly.
I don't either. What has happened here? He's going to have to bail out with a draw. If we could see Hikaru on camera, I could almost guarantee a head shake. He might lose this position now. A very misplayed attack there by Hikaru because Magnus was almost dead to rights.
If we just go back a bit, I mean, if we can, if we have time for it, just to move after rook takes g7 with 33.
Yeah.
Instead of bishop takes d8, he had rook g1 check first. He missed that. I don't,
no, this was a huge improvement. You have to give this check first, let the king get to an awkward square.
No, leave the bishop there, queen
and then
h7.
Queen h7 guards the bishop and threatens...
It's winning.
Let's show everybody. Rook to g1 check, and then queen to h7.
And if queen takes h4, the only move stopping mate, rook g8 check.
You just check and check.
And check again, and I take your rook, and it's over. So,
right. Honestly, just a terribly misplayed position there by Hikaru. And he offered a draw. Magnus said no, because he thinks he can find a way to escape the checks. And just like Hikaru turned things around after being lost last game, Magnus did the same here, but this was a true gift from the American. I mean, that position was over, and that was a win that he's going to bag and then come up with a tied score. But with 22 minutes left in the 5-minute portion, he's about to go down by 2 games again. This is not going to be a happy Hikaru after this game.
No, we're going to have to bring out sad Hikaru probably.
Yeah, that was a very, very frustrating...
Wait a second. He might be able to bail out with a draw. I don't see where that king is going. There are a lot of checks.
A lot of checks about to come here.
So, for example, queen...
But I don't know. Somehow I just don't buy it. I feel like it's a matter of geometry at this point.
Queen takes g6 is check. King a5, no more checks. Important.
Just like that. Resigns.
Unless...
Wowzers. I think that Hikaru Nakamura has got to be very frustrated about that, and it's going to be something that... Oh.
So he's going to queen a...
Is there a swindle?
I don't think so, but there are a bunch of checks.
Queen d5.
Yep.
Yeah, Hikaru just resigns.
Yeah.
Wowzers, wowzers, wowzers. A huge, huge victory for Magnus Carlsen. Yeah. Just an absolute, destructive... self-destructive affair there by Hikaru, right?
Yeah, he looked like he had a promising attack. But
well, it was more than promising, right? We were showing variations that won, and with Hikaru losing that game, he's back to a 2-game deficit, and Magnus Carlsen is back in the driver's seat. Just one game right there takes it from a tied match to a 2-game match, and even though it's still early, that feels like a huge moment right there, that Hikaru did not come up with that game.
And let's remind everyone that there's 21 minutes left in the 5-minute and 2-second increment segment, which means a couple more games because these games have been lasting quite a while. We've had 7 total games thus far. We expect probably 2 or 3 more in this time control. And if you're Hikaru, you probably want to get out of this 5-minute segment. We knew going in this was probably the worst segment for Hikaru. The more time on the clock, the harder it is for Hikaru because Magnus is such a strong blitz player. Hikaru, as we've predicted, will need to go into the bullet portion down as few points as possible. Right now it's 2 points. You don't want to let that get away. And right now with the black pieces, again, Hikaru facing a sort of King's Indian attack.
Right.
But it's different. He was encountering that bishop in the last few games. He decided, I don't want to get my king under attack. Look at the king now. The king on Jade is very, very safe. Nothing really to work about.
And we have a mirror, a double Carlsen effect here, and that's mainly because we actually have the issues with Hikaru Nakamura's webcam that we are troubleshooting right now. We will deal with that. I don't want to take away from the chess, so just put up with double Magnus, double the fun, double Mingum. The position is totally different than the other King's Indian attacks. You are right, and I don't know that that's any better for Hikaru, but it's certainly a weird and funky position. Now I kind of like black's position here, looking at the potential of the C file and the fact that white's pieces have sort of been blunted on the king side, right? Maybe black comes up with the way to defend the king side and move into an attack.
And absolutely, and black should keep the tension there. Going pawn takes e4 is generally a mistake in this type of structure. The reason why it allows a knight to capture e4 and all of a sudden white's pieces are very harmoniously placed. Now, with the pawn on e4, if you ever go e5, that pawn gets quick, and he did go e5, that pawn is blockaded by the bishop on e6. The knight can swing back to d8. The best blockading piece is a knight. And now look at the squares e3 and c3. I think
that was actually, I don't know, how did Magnus allow that, right? Here comes the knight.
Well, knight takes f4 is a threat, knight c3 is a threat, knight e3 is a threat. I mean, I think Magnus just lost.
Hikaru might have just gotten a gift that hopefully he feels a little bit better about, considering the gift he gave Magnus last game. And again, if you're just joining us here, it's a 2-game lead. We have 18 minutes left in the 5-minute portion. We've seen some crazy chess, right? Some high-quality games, and then some blunders by the 2 best blitz and bullet players in the world. So, here Magnus, I think, is going to have to rethink the approach he took to this King's Indian.
And the question is, if bishop b2, right? That looks like a move stopping knight c3. The question is, do you go knight e3 and let white sacrifice,
fall?
or do you take on f4, Danny? And by taking on f4, my point is that if bishop to b2, we can just play it on the board. After bishop to b2, knight takes f4 as a possibility. You're getting rid of that fianchetto bishop.
Forget about knight e3. Yeah, just gobble up that pawn,
and
which, by the way, also weakens this pawn here.
Yeah, huge attack.
And I agree. So let's see how Magnus decides to deal with this. It's one of those positions that every game I've highlighted, when things are going wrong for Hikaru, the clocks are essentially reversed, right? Magnus is up 1.5 minutes on time.
Yes.
When things are going wrong for Magnus, Hikaru is up on time. So it's just funny that these guys play fast when they're confident. They value time. So if you're ever wondering how do they feel, look at the clocks, and it kind of tells you.
Yeah, time
I kind of like your idea. I still think Hikaru is in the driver's seat after knight e3.
I think what he'll do is knight e3. Rook takes.
The rook has to take it, because if you move the queen, everybody, this rook is going to gobble c2. And that's a serious problem.
Yeah, or the knight or the rook, one of them is going to capture there, and that's not looking good. But if you do go rook e3, the problem is after pawn takes e3, the knight will move after rook e3. Oh, he didn't go rook e3 and queen e2, but yeah, I mean now he's down a pawn. Bishop a2 traps the rook on b1. I think bishop a2 wins. Yep, there it is.
Yep.
So not looking very good here. But e6 is a threat. Maybe that was a blunder. Because now after knight c4, e6 is coming in the very near future, and that's not looking great. So what can you do here? Okay, so you can go...
Yeah, it's almost like...
Okay, but... I keep talking, I don't see
White
anything.
still has to be a little bit worse here.
Oh, White definitely is worse.
But Nakamura having to calculate really for the first time, you see him using his time, and we're trying to calculate this situation.
So he gives back the pawn with knight to e3, and I think that's a good move, because now if knight takes e3, might be able to throw bishop takes...
What about the d4 pawn hanging here? I feel
like...
The
on b1 is hanging as
well.
well.
Yeah, but knight takes d4 threatens e6 in some positions. This is a mess.
Okay, but the problem is if knight takes e4, I go knight takes c4, and we can even just play a few moves there. The problem is once you e6, now your knight d4 is actually hanging. So e6.
And there's no intermezzo by me?
Bishop takes d4.
It's Chekaruski, Chekalina Lashlamba.
Exactly.
My old friend comes back to haunt me. Yeah, that's a big point. In fact, Magnus agrees and decides to just gobble the knight right as we were showing that. He gets out of things. What?
But look at the positional dominance now for Black.
I disagree. I feel like this is turned around big time. I mean, Hikaru unable to come away with a serious material advantage there, being left with this e-pawn that is passed.
Queen takes b5 is at least one pawn for the moment.
A7 is hanging.
b2 is,
we have b2.
A lot of stuff is going on here.
If I'm evaluating this position from what I had earlier, I feel like something slipped away.
Yeah.
These players are both mentally tough enough to usually just focus in the moment and not beat themselves up about the past. But one of the things to remember about this format, where you're playing tons of blitz games in a row, is if you lose a game where you blew a win, or you do something that causes you to be emotionally upset, forget about the X's and O's, it's a little harder to let go of than in a real tournament where you have lots of time to think about things in between rounds. So that's why sometimes you see swings where one side delivers a few counter blows while the other guy kind of collects themselves and then it comes back. But I still feel like something went wrong there for Hikaru to not have more. I mean, the knight on f7 is ugly. This e-pawn is strong. I don't know what the evaluation is. According to our system, Black was up by nearly a couple pieces until bishop a2, and actually White is doing fine here. And I agree. I don't like this position for Hikaru.
But queen d4 is kind of a weird move.
I think he's trying to threaten.
Nothing.
Okay, I guess he can't threaten this. You're right, because still we have Chekalina Lashlamba there.
Yeah, that was a very weird move. In fact, I think that favored Black, because now bishop takes f3. The d3 pawn will be hanging in certain circumstances. The knight on f7, you're right, is the worst piece on the board from either color.
Right.
And so rerouting it, for example, then I could go to e6 right now. Black would be very, very
right,
happy.
Exactly. And the point, everybody, we say it's the worst piece because d knight access. Okay, I mean, theoretically, the pawn's pinned, but it's not possible to really get this knight quickly to a better square.
Yeah.
So the time is favoring Hikaru. So I guess from that perspective, we're if everything we've been touting is true, that clearly Hikaru is still a little bit in the driver's seat. But I'm still not convinced that things have not gone wrong here for Black. Okay, maybe now's the time you finally gobble up b5.
Yeah, I
if
think
you're
so,
Black.
because their attack is if bishop takes g2, you actually lose on the spot. And the problem is that if bishop g2, queen takes d7, rook takes e6, intermezzo, you're going to start capturing every single other minor piece and then take the bishop on g2. You take on g7, take on f7, etc. So you cannot take on g2 if you're Hikaru Nakamura, but you can go queen takes b5.
I wonder what he's calculating here. Is there some immediate tactic on queen takes b5, rook to c5 as an option maybe?
Oh,
actually.
Yeah, that looks problematic.
Actually, that's okay. You can move. Oh, you can't go to b4 or a5 to hit the knight because it's protected. This is actually a serious problem for Black. Interesting and resourceful play by Magnus now defending a weird position.
Ooh, that's a scary move to make, because now the move e5 to e6 at some point will threaten checkmating ideas, because look at that battery. Again, the bishop on b2, the queen on d4 line up perfectly on the diagonal. So a move like pawn e5 to e6 at the right moment will be a knockout blow.
Checkmate on this diagonal, everybody. Look out for that. Queen and bishop, again, a battery. Two pieces lined up there. Okay, so Magnus says, I don't want any of that because maybe I have better. And actually now, again, things are turning around. Knight d8 is sort of forced.
It's a good move. Knight's coming to e6. In fact, once that knight gets to e6, that pawn f4 is under attack. It covers the g5 square from the knight.
I think probably you'll see king f7 first to unpin the bishop.
Although, actually, yes, you will. Because I was going to say, if you go knight e6,
right,
and you go bishop a3, you just go rook takes d4. I'm happy.
Oh, okay. So Hikaru says, yeah, I don't need to unpin the bishop right away. Let's get the knight out. And
is rook takes b5? Is that a pawn?
Yeah, why not? Why not play rook takes b5?
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. I guess Hikaru being patient with the position, but still, this was a weird game. I mean, I guess Hikaru's going to get credit. I was going to play up the storyline that he just blew a completely winning position the last game, and I felt like if he did the same here, it would be devastating for Nakamura. But it looks like Hikaru's going to find a way to pull this one out. It would take resourcefulness on the level of Magnus Carlsen to win this one as white. Well,
it's interesting. Now, if e6,
wait a second. Problem town.
Knight d5 check. King takes. That's smart.
Boom town. Hikaru baiting the knight to d5 so that when he gobbles, you take me, I take you, right? An eye for an eye. So Hikaru is sort of saving the position just by the hair on his chin. And ironically, Hikaru is growing out a winter beard right now.
Bishop h6, yep, there he goes. The f4 pawn is falling, e6 is falling.
And again, time is telling us that probably Nakamura is in the driver's seat, despite my criticisms.
Look at that a-pawn. That a-pawn, we've seen it before, haven't we?
We have seen an a-pawn.
That a-pawn is going to roll down the board. And so I would not be surprised if Magnus resigns after king takes e6 here, for example. Yep. Yeah,
there's no, not resigning, but
bishop... I want to trap your rook.
That's interesting. Yeah, but a nice move by Hikaru says, look, I'll just go win the rook ending. I'm not too concerned about how I win the game. I just want to win.
I don't understand.
Moving with a tempo doesn't seem to do anything. Right, yeah, that's what I would play, and now gobble. Okay, let him take the pawn on h7 with check and then come up, and we've just done a transposition.
Yep.
Bob's your uncle. All roads lead to Rome, and Black is going to go on to win this game. And Hikaru, a big win for him, right? I mean, he literally... If you do the math of, what would have been, could have been, should have been, if Hikaru wins last game and this game, he has his first lead in the match since we started. Those of you just joining us missed that Hikaru Nakamura won the first game. Magnus Carlsen struck back with 2 wins. And he's kind of maintained a point or a 2-game lead ever since.
Yes.
But Hikaru had a win in the last game that he blew. He now wins this game, and he's staying within striking distance. So you got to give him credit for not emotionally beating himself up after losing the one before.
Absolutely, he's only down 1 game, and we keep talking. This is all going to be settled in the bullet portion, the end of this match. We have 9 minutes and 35 seconds left of the 5-minute segment, which could mean this is our last game. They have been playing. That game was particularly long. If the game ends within that time frame, we'll have to play another one. But if they play a long game like this last one,
I got to give a shout out to the first really very well thought out Danny insult of the day. There's going to be a lot more insults to me before the day's through. But Hutch Lover 1 in the chat said, "Fun fact: Chekalina Lashlamba was Rensch's high school sweetheart. I asked her to marry me, but she said no because I wasn't a GM, and now she lives happily with a guy named Magnus in Ouchtown." So that's just poetry right there.
That was well played.
Well played, sir.
That was speaking of well played. Well, I mean, Hikaru just seemed...
Hikaru switches up for the first time. This is the first time we have not seen that Nimzo Indian. If you're just joining us, Hikaru has been beating his head against the wall in a certain variation of the Nimzo, coming up with 0-3. Now, he should have won the last game.
Yep.
But after 0-3, Hikaru says, you know what, let me come back to this one later. It's time for me to play the King's Indian attack. We only have 8 minutes left. We are currently in the Grandmaster Blitz Battle Championship final. Don't go anywhere. Not 8 minutes left in the whole thing. 8 minutes left in the 5-minute portion. A quick break, and then we will move on to 3-minute chess.
And then for those of you wondering, we hope to get Hikaru back on camera in that break. But for now, we're just going to focus on the chess because it's such a tight match. 4.5 Magnus Carlsen, 3.5 Hikaru Nakamura, playing for a big prize fund. The prize fund just for this final is $11,000. We have to thank our sponsors always, Indigo Capital Partners, PeopleTalk.ru, and Buren Venture Capital. Thank you for providing us and helping us provide this great event in the GM Blitz Battle Championship. And in this particular game here between Hikaru and Magnus, Magnus has given up the 2 bishops. Note that white has a c3 bishop that is unopposed by a dark strip bishop for black, which can come back to hurt black a lot. At some point, white would love to do a knight f5. Maybe not right now, but at some point go knight f5, applying pressure on that very vulnerable g7 square.
But in compensation for the bishop pair, what black has is 2 knights in the center. It's often said that if you can get your knights in the center, usually they might be equal to the bishop there, but it's dangerous because there's a lot more than just those general guidelines we try to look for in chess. The d5 pawn is falling, but as Robert said, if we get a party going on g7, that's real problems
bishop
for black.
takes d5 would have just hung a piece because bishop takes f6. So that was something that was in the air. And right now we've seen a bit of transition here.
Magnus doesn't care about targeting that pawn. He wants to open up things to defend. But what's going on here? f3?
f3 does not look like it was a good move.
f3 was sort of a strange decision. I'm going to bet that Hikaru just flat out missed c5. Now he's forced to simplify in a direction he wasn't looking to do, losing his bishop pair. Now, who's better here? Probably the position's still a teeny bit better for white, despite that.
And the reason why is not something that comes to the eye at first, and it is because look at the knights. The white knight is actually better than the black knight because it's going to f5. Then knight on f6 is corralled by that e4 pawn covering d5. The f3 pawn covers both g4 and e4. Mm-hmm. So I like white's knight better, which to me speaks of a slight advantage.
Yeah, and look at that defensive move there, everybody. Queen to c1 was played. It was played to prevent queen g5, but as Robert said, it was played out of a need to get queen g5, and here comes tactics, right? Hikaru was putting pressure using his knight on f5 to create a mess of it on the king side. The threat here, everybody, let's say a random move is played, knight takes h6, Smashville, the queen comes in, removing the defender of the knight, and we could have some serious problems here if you're black. So Magnus says, you know what, no soup for you. I'll play king h7 and prevent that idea.
And black could have also tried to trade queens with queen e5, but that's not what black likes in these endgames. That knight on f5 is a dominating piece. Mm-hmm. The rook would have come to d1. And
so dominant, he wants to go get rid of it, right? He threatens to take. Hikaru says, no thank you.
And yeah, a big problem with the king on h7 is now at some point pawn to f4 will be quite good because the e4 pawn, and that's why he moved his king. The king would have been in a line with that.
You don't want your king on a diagonal that's potentially being open there, right? Absolutely. So now that the king took care of that threat, everybody, the king is just safeguarding itself back to home. Let the pawns do their job of protecting their leader.
I love white's position here.
I love the way Hikaru's playing this. Yeah. I mean, seriously, after that frustrating loss of the position he should have won, he has played 2 very good games here. Look at
that move, rook d2. Instead of trading, keeping the tension on d-file and allowing black saying, please take me on d2, I will take control of the d-file. So,
and the one thing I will say is that despite we both agree that white is still better here, the long-term thing I want to implant in everyone's head now, plant the seed, is that there is this 3-on-2 pawn majority, and that means that those pawns have 1 less pawn to becoming a queen than white's 4-on-3 majority on the king side. You always want to keep an eye on the forest through the trees when you're playing these positions and look for an opportunity. So the point is, if all the pieces came up the board willy-nilly, you might see b5, c4, and a5 and all these moves. Now, none of those moves are possible for Carlsen currently. This bishop does a pretty darn good job of strangling the queen side. But look out for that in the long run. Time, unlike all the games we've seen, is deadlocked right now.
Yes.
This could be the last game of the 5-minute portion for the record. And that would be a welcomed break. We're pretty exhausted after the first 90 minutes here. I'm sure the players are too. And it would also be an interesting point to end. Very, very close match here. Only a one-game lead.
Good move by Magnus. Knight to b8, trying to go a6, b5, get those pawns going.
Yep.
If you're Hikaru, you can think about trying to go a4, but it feels risky to put that pawn on the
anytime
square.
you put a pawn on the same color square as the enemy bishop, you better watch out for that pawn becoming a target later on. So that's as Hess just said, knight b8 protects a6. If the pawn comes to a6, then b5 is protected, and we get a little bit of that thing I was foreshadowing earlier where black is trying to mobilize his pawn majority on the queen side.
And even that pawn thrust is actually a bit dangerous for black because the king can start snaking over to c3 and either d4 or b4. And it's something that black has to be careful about. Oh, he trades the bishop.
I was just going to say, when is the time to make the next transition? Always think about that in your games. What trades do I want to make?
And very importantly, if we show bishop takes c4, knight c4, b5, now knight, let's say knight d6 is perfectly reasonable. Let's say king f8 just to show the point. Now pawn, at some point, you're going to attack this pawn c5. Let's say knight to b7. And again, we have that ugly pawn chain where now white's king can try to run in.
You want to be really careful to get stuck in a position where both enemy counterparts, the king and the knights, are more active for the opponent. That's almost more important than a pawn.
Yeah.
And so that's a very dangerous thing to look out for. We're getting a position sort of similar to what we just talked about. The bishops have been traded. b5 was clearly played. The knight came in and headed to f5. So Magnus is keeping his king and knight as active as he can. Unlike the other night ending we saw that Carlsen went on to win, I think Hikaru will be the only one who can win this endgame just based on the activity of the pieces at this point.
Absolutely. And so, well, the black king is stuck protecting g7, right?
Ooh,
wow.
Pawn town, population me, bro. Can I take it and play g5?
So take...
No, there must have been some sort of swindle-dindle.
The knight went to e5 with check, and then it was, that was a nice move by Magnus. But it still doesn't get him totally out of
Not out of the woods yet, because now that he's forced to push, you may be in a position where eventually you... But look at Magnus just proving us wrong time. His play in the endgame is so phenomenal. We actually have some information on that via our new cool statistics we're using. I feel like he's just outplaying Hikaru here. Where's the
Well, the knight can go to c5 right now.
I know, but I feel like Hikaru's position hasn't gotten any better, and Magnus is creating opportunities to get targets.
That was a good waiting move because you're protecting g4, so knight e5 doesn't come in.
Puts black in a little bit of a zugzwang, right?
Yeah, and so where does black's king go? If you go to d7, I was going to knight c5 with check.
But then knight d6, and
I'm okay with this.
Okay, so I guess white's happy to win that pawn, right? So I guess Carlsen agrees with you. He's thinking about this position, not quite sure. Okay, he's going to allow the potential king infiltration. Look for a race. We are about to see who has better running shoes. Personally, I own a pair of Nikes.
And now
they're going to race. You're going to look at white.
b7. If you go knight c6, pawn to a4, breaking up the pawn chain.
Boom, look at that. That's how you break open lines for your pieces. You undermine those that are protected. This sort of thing would be very, very good for white. This king is coming in with fun. Okay.
He sacrificed
Carlsen recognizes that. Can't play knight to c6. He's going to sacrifice the a-pawn for activity.
So now the question is, you go a4 first if you're white. And the point is, again, the same undermining idea. With the knight takes on a5, it can go back and take on c4. But no, this makes more sense.
Yeah, I think just gobble and still look. I was going to say, why not look for a4 right away? But okay. He still has a4 coming, everybody.
No, a4, pawn takes a4.
Yeah, and then I can take c4.
Okay. What I was worried about is that his a-pawn is used as distraction. Look at the kingside pawn.
It's perfect timing. After takes, and bakes.
Yeah.
White is going to catch this pawn before the black king gets here.
But I wasn't going to push my pawn. That's the thing. I was going to go king to c6 instead.
Okay. You're still losing, right? In the king and pawn ending, I have opposition, right? Barely.
You're right.
It's important that the outside pass pawn is evaluated, though, because Robert's right. It's very dangerous when that pawn pulls the king away, and then suddenly this king is actually closer to the bigger goal. But Hikaru avoided that.
And important to know that look at the 3-on-2 on the king's side. For white, you cannot create a pass pawn because the f6 pawn stops the e pawn from moving, and the g5 pawn actually stops 2 pawns at once. The pawn on g5 stops the h pawn from going to h4, and of course is blocking the g4 pawn as well. And this is the last game of the 5-minute portion.
That is right.
The time is up in this segment, so after this game, they will get a 3-minute break. And Hikaru now down a minute on the clock. Granted, the position is not so complicated. Well, actually, maybe it is complicated, and I'm being a little wrong here, because now, actually, knight a5 runs right into knight d6. And now that knight is trapped in a5 and the e4 pawn can't be protected. So
Yeah, Hikaru has some things to think about here, and he's doing just that. Magnus, although we haven't shown it on camera right now, we still see Magnus very clear, so no shenanigans are going on with the players, don't worry. Magnus just took a confident sip of water, much like this.
well, look at the time. He went knight a5, so he's sacking the pawn. Wow.
What?
Wow, that was
He's running to the king side, flips the script. I'm going to bet this ends in a draw. That there is some way for Carlsen to swindle and protect the king side.
Yeah. So e5 takes, king takes.
Yeah, but a big hold. A big hold
Knight
for
h4.
Carlsen.
He might win.
Whoa, something has gone wrong.
Yeah,
Something has gone wrong for
I think
Hikaru.
Hikaru lost. Knight f3. Yeah, knight's coming over to take it on h3. Oh boy.
Wow.
Oh boy.
Wow.
In fact, that is reminiscent.
Wow.
Of,
That is
reminiscent of MBL versus Hikaru. Hikaru won a game by putting his knight on g8, protecting his passed pawn. So
from this position here, we're talking about something that can only end in a win for white. Up a pawn and a knight ending, but he ends up
wow.
throwing it all in on this sacrifice, and things go wrong. He loses the game.
This is our game of the match thus far. It was
So
really,
far, that kind of comeback is something that can really hurt. And especially if you're Nakamura, you consider you're down 2 games after the 5-minute portion. It probably could have been 2 games opposite, right? I mean, he blew a couple winning positions, but Carlsen gets all the credit for being resourceful. Hikaru Nakamura has joined us again. The webcam is... Hey, buddy. Yeah, we're here.
Okay, I don't know what's going on. It's like on and off, and I can't figure out. Whatever.
Okay, working out. Thank you for figuring it out. The fans love hearing your voice, and they love seeing your face. You still have a couple minutes break if you want to take it, man.
Okay, all right.
Still have a couple minutes break, and we are back in business for the
Wow.
love of all that is holy. Danny can relax. I take personal responsibility for anything that doesn't go right on these shows, and I am feeling better.
Does that mean you take responsibility for things that I say?
No, you're the one thing I don't take responsibility for.
Yeah, well, that's fair. You already have 4 kids. You don't need me.
Yeah, I don't need any more. I don't need a 5th kid, but. Oh man, what I do need is a little bit of a breather after that. That was crazy, right? So we have a 2-game lead currently in the. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can check on the results. It has been updated,
Yes.
not quite after the last game, but after the 5-minute portion, we have actually a 2-game lead for Magnus Carlsen, not a 1-game lead. We will be updating that momentarily, but still, just amazing. Some back and forth games. I think if you asked us beforehand, could we have expected a more exciting 5-minute portion? The answer is no.
Absolutely not. And there were some games going back and forth. There was a game that Hikaru won with the black pieces where Magnus was better, and all of a sudden Hikaru had this passed a-pawn running down the board even though he lost his queen earlier in the game. So it has been a back and forth battle. Both sides have missed chances, have made some clear inaccuracies, allowing their opponents back in the game. 5.5 to 3.5. I'm not sure. Does that feel right to you in Carlsen's favor?
It feels right in terms of I'm not surprised that Carlsen has a 1 or 2 game lead after Blitz. I think it's the portion where he has the biggest advantage. I think he's the stronger player.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it. He is the world champion, right? So I'm not surprised, but I'm a little surprised at how it got there. I thought that with a couple chances to convert, although you and I highlighted in our pregame show and on Chess Center, for those of you who don't know, let's have a staff member share a link to Chess Center. We highlighted that what Nakamura needs to do to win this match is convert on his opportunities. You are not going to get many opportunities to win against Magnus Carlsen. Nakamura didn't do that in a couple of games. If that comes back to bite him, we'll see in the end. But certainly there is still a lot of chess to happen. The games are starting momentarily. I am just getting ready for what is going to be the next portion of our show here.
The 3-minute.
Both players are back. I think we go. And the games are about to start. We're moving into 3-minute. We're going to see the first Chess 960 game of 3-minute, which Hikaru Nakamura won right in the when the match started. Now we have Hikaru Nakamura with black though, and Magnus Carlsen with white in a Chess 960. The players certainly need to take a think in the beginning of a Chess 960, and just like that, it is time for us to run the clock. The games have begun. OMG.
And normally this would be called the Sicilian defense, when white starts with pawn e4, black starts with pawn c5. I don't think we can call that in 960 chess when the king is on d8 and the pieces are all mixed up here. And the point of c5, what looks good for black for Nakamura here is that now actually what he just blunted exactly what I was going to say was that the queen could have come and hit the h2 pawn. So now Hikaru is trying to gain some space. He is he's put his pawn on g5, which opens up this bishop on h8. Normally, a move like g5 would be risky if our king was in e8 and pieces were normal. But in 960, you don't play in the same exact type of way you do when you have the pieces all mixed up.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying you don't play the same way you do because many people are like, say, what? I mean, this is what I tell my students not to do, right? Whenever you push pawns like this, you can create what I like to call Swiss cheese, Tom and Jerry cartoon reference, right? I mean, this is like potential for problems, and so you usually want to change that and fill those holes. But Carlsen taking a very positional approach here, partner. I mean, this is not nearly the aggressive approach we saw Hikaru play in the Chess 960 game to start, where Hikaru, frankly, put the hurt on Magnus Carlsen in the first game of this match. Here, not so much.
Yeah, that queen on b1 looks a little funny for the moment because it's trapped by its own pieces. But at some point, look for the move pawn to b3 or pawn to b4. But look at this. Now, you actually, black can sacrifice some material here. Well, it's an interesting trade-off. Knight takes d3, Danny, is an interesting move, right? Because it...
You take me, I take you.
Yep.
Yeah, well, Hikaru wants none of this. West running this. But...
Castle queenside is an option for white, isn't it?
It is. In that position, everybody, you can castle queenside legally.
The king and queen, the king and rook, switch places.
I don't know that it's really any better than what Carlsen does here, but I will say that Hikaru's demeanor, his body language has perked up. Despite being down 2 games after the 5-minute portion, I feel like Hikaru, if he's within striking distance, as the time control gets faster, he's right where he wants to be. And I think Hikaru loves Chess 960.
Yes.
I just think he loves it.
Yeah, it must be very interesting to him. Everyone should note that these players play each other all the time.
Yep.
They're playing the same tournaments, same round robins, and when you're playing the same players all the time, you often get the same openings. It gets a little frustrating and maybe a little boring for them. Having 960 is fresh from the start.
It's so fun.
Yeah. The very first move. And here, there's some tactics in there. I'm concerned a little bit for white. If pawn takes d4, you're going to take back, of course, and then I'm going to go knight to g4. So I'm attacking the knight.
Hashtag why not?
The bishop, the knight in d4 is also on pre, and if you take
with check.
Yeah, and you have to block with maybe the knight. It's uncomfortable.
Magnus is scratching his head a little bit. I think he's wondering. Hikaru's calculating, and time again says that Magnus is doing fine, right? The time is still favoring Magnus even as we move to the faster time control. Make note of that because I think it's an important thing as this thing goes on.
Absolutely.
The score is 2 games for Magnus as we head into the 3-minute portion. If you're just joining us, where have you been? Robert gets really angry when you miss his TV shows. But thank you for being here for the Grandmaster Blitz Battle Championship final. What's happening, Robert? Things are getting weird.
I don't like white's last move, bishop c3, because it looks like it challenges the bishop on h8, but in fact it pins your own pawn.
Yeah, but that's a Chekaruski.
That's one Chekaruski, and now I can take on c5 with, I don't know.
But what's going to happen? Neither side can castle anymore. Both sides have committed to moving their kings. I have it's so not pattern recognition for even us, right? I mean, like the thing about Chess 960 is a lot of strong players you rely on positions you've seen before and applying your experience. I have no idea what's going on here. This is a weird position.
I'm starting to like white, honestly. I thought the d4 square would be enough for black.
But this pony is so strong. Yeah, that's a real issue for black.
And the b file is actually a real issue. I'm worried about once pieces start trading. Look at that rook on g8. It needs to connect with the rook on c8. And that means the king has to go away from the e8 square off that rank. So now, c4 is actually...
Yeah, c4 is a problem, though. That's a pawn, right?
A pawn is a pawn.
A pawn is a pawn no matter where you live, no matter where you're from.
But still, the rooks need to get connected, and they need to get connected now. A move like rook to b7, well, now rook b7 doesn't work because bishop takes c2. There's going to be a knight d4 check, forks to the end. In fact, now I really just like black. Black is up in pawn.
Yeah, Magnus slipped up there. I don't know exactly what the blunder was. We don't have any computers to evaluate, but too many pawns, not enough time. And
don't love that move.
Okay, the coordination for I was going to say I don't love Hikaru taking here, and white's pieces are better coordinated despite the material advantage for black. This bishop is leaving something to be desired, but otherwise, I mean the rooks are. So where are we putting this knight? And are there tactics like rook takes and then rook b8 check, picking up this guy?
Well, now
Not
rook
anymore.
Rook c4. Oh, knight a3. What a tactic. I was like, rook c4, that bishop is trapped.
But
after
then
rook
knight
c4,
a3 gaining a tempo, everybody.
well, it's forking both those rooks. You know, win material for black. So right now, rook c4 still the same exact tactic as...
Hikaru's trying to run, and the question I was going to say maybe he should have run and given up the e pawn just to get counterplay, but I think it was maybe too much with the knight coming to f5 with check. So yeah, we don't want to get too complicated with the variations here. The big thing for everybody at home is, will black coordinate with king g7 and get the pieces going?
Look at the clock. Look at the clock here.
Before white gets weird with it. Yeah, this has gone wild. I cannot make a prediction other than Hikaru Nakamura will be down on time first.
Because he's got 17
because
seconds.
he's currently living off the increment.
But he's playing some smart chess right now because he's trying to get rid of this knight on f6. It's a really annoying piece.
Yeah, very
it's
annoying.
frustrating him. And then now king h6, knight f6, you can see a repetition if that was what White wanted.
But who's playing for a win here? I mean,
White is playing for a win. The outside passed pawn, a pawn
Okay,
might
it's
decide
very
matters.
good. Right, okay.
And note that two minor pieces often are better than a rook. The only thing black has going for him is this passed pawn to c3,
Mm-hmm.
and rook to b2 actually now is quite an annoying threat. But now look at, he's going to pick up the pawn. And
But trading this pawn for this pawn, yes, white is still better, but maybe it takes away the chances of this outside passed pawn becoming an issue. Look for a mating net, right,
Yes.
if you're keeping score at home. Was e4 there? No, not quite, I guess, because you don't want to block your own bishop. But
right.
But this is where Hikaru has to find some way to coordinate without giving up a checkmate, a threat, because this knight is sort of keeping this king corralled in a cage right now.
And credit to Hikaru, he had 17 seconds left or so. He's worked his way back up.
He's worked his way back into time. Wait a tick. Rook to c8.
Yeah, that. Oh,
Well-
no, there was no mate because rook g8 check, the king would go to h6.
And now there's checks.
Yes.
Now there's checks. There's also this check, and then there's this pawn.
I don't like that move. Why did he go
But
there?
the bishop is trapped. That's why.
Oh.
Look at that. He's keeping the king trapping his own bishop so this bishop can't get out.
So now rook takes h2 is actually
There's
rook
a
h8.
there's a
rook
threat.
h8.
Is there a threat of rook takes f6 and then king
Well,
takes?
you don't want to give the f7 pawn, so you know rook h8 and capture the
and
rook.
gobble it up. Okay, but now he may have to make a decision because you either play rook h8 and go for the two rooks, or you sack here, pick up the bishop. And I actually agree with
now-
Hikaru. I think
now
this
he's
draws. I think that was the correct decision and a very resourceful defense by the American in this game.
And it should just be a
and
draw
he should
now.
just be able to draw this rook ending despite being down a pawn. And if what is rook h5? That was
He's trying to keep the rook in the h file, protecting
yeah, but if
h2.
e4 and rook d3, yeah, now he's like
Now black
this is instant regret town, population Magnus, because
the rook is there's nowhere
I mean
to
the rook
go.
is nowhere to go. I mean it was a sort of a okay. They take a draw. He's up a pawn anyway. Lots of people playing guess the move. Remind everybody, go to chess.com/live. Do not just watch this in Twitch. Create a free membership and then guess the move. The players rematched because they're that excited, and then the game was aborted. We're about to play classical chess now.
And note that I saw Georg Meyer, GM Georg Meyer, was in 10th place and guessed the move there. So players are doing better than Grandmaster
Right.
Georg Meyer, who's one of the best blitz players we have on Chess.com.
One of the best chess players on the planet. Yes.
Absolutely. And he wins many Title Tuesday events. But back to the chess. That was huge for Hikaru.
Yeah, to hold that position was huge.
He would
I
have been
agree.
down 3 games, which he's never faced that deficit in these matches before. So staying within 2-game deficit was very big for him. And a very funny note there is that we got a little notification. Hikaru may have violated our fair play policy because he aborted the game. They didn't like that, apparently. So he,
that makes our members happy that we try to control game abusers from starting and aborting. But Hikaru will not have his account restricted. He aborted appropriately because he's not supposed to play another chess 960 position. Hikaru's confident right now. He's zoned in. This is normal chess. Going a little bit back to the structure we've seen work out so well for Carlsen in this match. But a little bit different with the early structure, creating the isolated pawn. An isolated pawn means he's all alone, just like the word means in real life, right? No one likes to be isolated, and that's a weakness when you don't have a defense by other pawns. But in order to justify the isolated pawn, usually black has things like more control over some central squares, like he does here. So that's kind of the battle for everybody at home. Hikaru might have to deal with a pony popping into e4 at some point. And maybe rook c8's a move here. I would say rook c8 or knight e4 is a move that's coming.
So rook c8 will run into bishop h3. Now, it looks funny because normally our bishop is fianchettoed. We like to keep it in front of the king on g2, but now bishop h3 actually attacks some material, and the bishops are great.
Yeah, so that would be a move ill-advised for Magnus. He's probably considering... I think he's probably considering which knight to pop into e4 with. I would suggest the f6 knight because it frees up opportunities for my pieces to kind of get more active. I don't like the move bishop f8. I was right as I say that. I don't like it because it opens the e-file. Magnus shakes his finger and says, silly Danny. Okay, so I thought bishop g5 might be irritating, but maybe it was just h6 and no problem, I guess. Okay.
Well, right now, the thing is, if you go knight c to e4, I'll consider capturing my rook as the c7 square, right?
Absolutely.
The rook and the bishop work very well together on the open line. And now, this is... So there's no longer an isolated pawn, important for all the viewers, that the f7 took on e6, protects the pawn on d5. However, there's going to be huge problems with a lot of the squares now. Queen d4 is a very nice-looking option. Queen d4 is a nice-looking option, and the point is that after queen to d4, you're attacking the pawn on b6 some more. The rook will come, and he went queen d4. Guess the move working out for me.
Yep.
And the point is now here, rook to c1, swinging the rook, hitting the queen on c8, and all of a sudden white is gaining all the space.
Right, and the b6 pawn is being threatened. Speaking of guess the move, let's announce it. We have literally hundreds and hundreds of people playing guess the move right now on the live server. First place in guess the move right now is user Nulita with 235 out of 483. Second place is Grandmaster Georg Meyer, 168 correct out of 283 total guesses. Third place is a username My Sick Duck. I had to read that correctly so as not to offend any small children. And he is in third place with 151 out of 360. So we are tracking your performances. Of course, we're giving away more than just 3 prizes. Lots of premium memberships being given away on Chess.com today, but just want to point that out. So knight to c5. Hikaru is really outplaying Magnus here. This is a phenomenal position
and
for
the
white.
reason why, look at that bishop on b7. Let's point that out. Where is that bishop going?
Big pawn, big pawn.
Exactly.
It's stuck behind squares.
What you going to do when you come for you?
Big pawn, big pawn. What you going to do? What you gonna do when they come? And here comes the 7th rank.
There's big pawn. There's 2 bishops for white. The bishop on f4 is unopposed. There's no dark square bishop for black.
Let's just say white has 99 problems, but the bishop pair ain't one right now.
Totally agree with that.
And when the 7th rank gets going,
I wouldn't go queen c7 because rook c8, trying to trade off all the pieces.
You're forcing me to trade. I'm never happy when you do that. Stop it. Stop forcing me to trade.
Queen
things.
b6, a nice move. Now maybe I'll go rook c5. Trying to capture with the pawn.
The nice thing about that move, everybody, is if Magnus took it, we'd get a protected passer, and so that's why Robert is suggesting that move. No, he trades, but what's the forcing follow-up?
Well, there doesn't need forcing. Just what is black going to do? Black really doesn't have that many moves to work with. Now,
this reminds me of a position that Magnus won against Hikaru recently with the bishop pair outplaying black, but this is in an over-the-board game. But you know, so the thing about this position is it's so bad for Magnus, but also, okay, now it's up for Hikaru to prove it, right? I was going to suggest a move like f3. Put the queen here, say no thank you. Then play f3 and maybe slowly improve the position. Okay, he finally plays the move I've been guessing. He's going to play king f2, maybe even king f3. And once he's in a position of total dominance, he might be willing to trade queens because this king can maybe make a run for it.
That is a nice move, queen e3. Forcing the king back. And now look, the pawn e6 is weak. The queen still controls the b6 square, the c5 square, etc. And now black is moving backwards. White can now go king f2, move forwards.
I love it. And here comes this idea that I've been talking about with king f2, followed by bringing the king up. Yep, guess the move there. And Hikaru is in the driver's seat. Will he go as far as what I said? Yes, he does. He goes all the way to king e3 now. And so when the king gets this close, what's going to happen, everybody, is he's going to force a queen trade. And then just walk the king in here, right? Walking in Memphis, and there's nothing black can do about it.
He's putting on his blue suede shoes.
I was testing you, and you passed that pop culture quiz, my friend.
Absolutely. I'll board that plane. But right now, there's a big problem for black, and there's nothing to do. You're moving back and forth, and there's really not much going on. Bishop d4 blocks that one check. And now, unfortunately for Magnus, look at the clock as well. We can't forget the time situation. Hikaru up 40 seconds on the clock, dominating on the board, and now look at this. He might reroute that bishop over to c5 to gain more space.
Yeah, Hikaru is he's kind of playing tickle here. He's just sitting on it happily. I mean, you see he's focused and confident. That's Hikaru look number 7. Anything in the top 10 usually means he likes the direction of the game. And okay, he gives back the c file there. I don't know about bishop e5. I might have put the queen on the battery first and then. But Hikaru's in control, and this is a tough position. If you look at the clock, it says he's in control. If he wins this game, he's back within a point. This match has been a wild and crazy one, back and forth stuff. Thank you for being here. If you're just joining us, again, we've got a lot of people watching the show, nearly 30,000 live viewers on Twitch, and
yeah, I mean, they're watching. Everyone's happy. I'm loving this. And look at that. No, it's not loving it. The knight on e8, because that bishop on e5 dominates it. The bishop controls every square the knight could possibly go to. Now you might want to trade queens. This actually is he does do it. And Danny, it looks like it is. With this king running, it's going to be a big, big problem because black is very much stuck. There's nowhere to really go. White can just start moving pawns forward. E3, he's slow playing it a little bit. And the knight has to remain on d7. So if white can somehow bring that bishop to e5, then start moving forward, eventually bishop e5 now.
Yeah, bishop e5. Black is just still, I think there's no rush.
Well,
that's
bishop e5,
why.
I'm threatening taking go king c5. My king is just running.
Okay, yeah, but I think that black is in a position where any trade could lead to just a dead loss endgame, and it's kind of nice, partner, when we've actually kind of foreshadowed the direction the game's going to head, and white is going to win this game by just dominance over this bad bishop and over the entry into these squares with an active king, and that's what we want to see right now. Currently, this chess stream is the 4th most watched thing. No, it is the 2nd. We are the 4th most watched stream on Twitch.tv right now. Right ahead of us is the World of Warcraft. So if you want to know why chess is fun, right now we are. Yeah, what did he do there? He allowed the knight to b6. He let the knight out. Who let the knight out? No fun right there. Why not knight c4? Oh, he's just going to take the draw. No. White has to play for a win here, even with the time advantage. I think Hikaru knows he wants this win. But Magnus may be feeling a little bit better than he has for most of the game.
Well, I don't see how white breaks. That's the big problem. He's committed his pawns like this. Look at this. The pawns are on the dark squares, which means they can't support a light square break.
I think white breaks at some point with a tactic. Is it possible to play a4? That's the move I'm looking to do. Or is it e4? No.
F5.
F5, tacticos,
Wow.
Look, Magnus paused and took a breath there. If you're not watching the player, oh, here it comes. Yup, you called it, my friend. And F5 might be the game changer.
Look at Hikaru. He is so calm right now.
And he's focused. This is a win. That's a breakthrough that black is not going to be able to recover from. That king is just too active.
Well, let's see. You have to time it correctly because you don't want king b7.
Knight e5.
Well, no, king b7 or king d5 maybe, and then the king kind of cuts you off. I was going to go king c6.
Yeah, and we have seen Hikaru already lose an endgame he had no business losing. So that's not something he wants.
Wow. Hikaru, I don't know who's winning this race. And I don't think it's Hikaru. Is it
draw?
Hikaru might lose.
No, I think it's a draw. If you trade and then king c6,
but black queen's
f4.
first. Black queen's first. I'm going to try to take the h-pawn, try to trade queens. You have to be very careful about how you play this.
Yeah. There's going to be
Queen
checks.
f5 check. I think it's over. Queen.
Is Magnus going to pull another miracle?
But look at this. The king will just come over and grab the pawn.
This is just ridiculous. His ability to flip the endgames around. I mean, his play has been so accurate. I mean, that was a position. I mean, just evaluate it from just, a few moves ago, right? This is a position where I can't even get back there in time, but white has no business losing.
Yeah.
More active king, totally dominant.
Oh, he blundered his queen.
And he blundered his queen.
For the second
and
time in
Magnus
the match.
and Magnus.
Magnus is cracking up, and Hikaru just throws himself.
Freaking out right now because he just blew yet another completely winning position, and he shakes his head and says terrible under his breath. Well,
that was the longest game of the match in terms of moves played, and it was also maybe potentially the worst played because it seemed like both sides. I mean, Hikaru had so many chances for most of the game, and look at him; he is dejected. He's broken in many ways.
Well, so far this has been the story of the match somewhat. It's not to take anything away from Magnus at all. In fact, it's sort of what we talked about. Hikaru has to convert on his opportunities against the strongest player in the world, or he is not going to win the match. He's had the opportunities, Robert. He's been winning in at least a couple games, and Magnus is resourceful, tough nut defense. He will not be cracked, and it's been frustrating for Hikaru. But it's still early in the match. We still have about an hour and 20 minutes to go, hour and 10 minutes with a 3-game lead for the world champion. This is fun. What's going on here? What's going on in this position? I'm actually asking a chess question, Robert. What's going on here?
I thought you were like, whoa, what's going on? Rhetorical. Right. But no, right now black is just trying to gain space. That's the point of the move pawn to a5, potentially go pawn to a4, open the rook up on the a file. And black is very solid. Yes, white is ahead in development. Look at the piece development. Bishop e6.
That's right. So far, we have a 7-4 lead there for Magnus Carlsen, for those just joining us. And again, as this game just gets started, we're seeing a position we haven't seen so far, right? This is not an opening that we've seen played at this point, unless I'm forgetting.
No, we have not seen this.
What is this? This is a weird...
It's a weird king. It's trying to go king's Indian, but they both fianchettoed on the king's side.
Fianchetto here. You put your bishops on the long diagonals and hope for tactics, but... Okay. White's better here. I mean, it's frustrating if you're Hikaru because you just lost that last game, but this is a position that looks difficult for black to equalize.
Wait a second. Bishop takes c4.
And then c5 is what you're thinking?
Exactly.
I read your mind. You're taking advantage of the
I'm wondering if e5 is now possible, opening up the light square. I don't know what's going on here.
Position is becoming a mess.
I think I like what black, and Magnus does not look happy. He does not look happy about this.
That is what happened, actually. We had c5, e5, we're taking, and then queen takes.
And then knight c6, and I don't really think black is
Black is definitely not worse. Not sure if black can win. Hikaru there slipped into a little bit. I don't know if you saw Hikaru number 11, the slight look up to the left. Those of you paying very close attention get kudos for watching Hikaru's look. Okay, here comes knight c6, as you said. The thing is that white has some targetable pawns, right? And so that makes black feel pretty good.
Interesting that he didn't want to trade the queens. I guess he felt that it might give white control some of the open files. But now after queen c5, I was going to mention that before he played it, now white definitely has some control over the important squares. But yeah, a very active queen. That's very nice. And you can just, well, now e7 and c6 are hanging. a5 could be hanging potentially. Bishop d4 is an interesting try.
Yeah, there's several moves here to consider for black. I was just about to say rook d8, promise, and also queen to b4 at some point. You might try to invite this trade because it opens up the a file for black. So not sure where this lady's headed to, maybe c3 or, okay, so b4 was what I was thinking, and the idea, everybody, is if Magnus trades, he's worsening his chances. So we'll see how Carlsen deals with that.
Yeah, that would not be a favorable trade for white because the rook is open the a file. The e5 pawn is still clearly under attack. And the queen on b4 also protects e7 through the queen.
That's a
protects
very
that important
observant point there. But now what? So now rook to d1 is play. We got all kinds of games of chicken going on, right? We got the rooks staring each other down on the file. Who's going to blink first? You got the queens staring each other down. Just like Kevin Bacon getting his shoe caught in that tractor, we're about to get foot loose up in this, and somebody's going to break first.
That was awesome.
And who's going to blink first? Hikaru's thinking about it, but he doesn't want to blink. But that's the problem with Hikaru. If I was to give an overall assessment, not converting on opportunities, but partly because of time pressure. Hikaru has played a little slower than I've expected in this match. I will say that.
Queen a4, was not expecting that move.
Hikaru totally blinked first. He traded. He was not the Kevin Bacon hero of that scenario.
So rook b8 maybe? I guess he's
Ooh, that's a nice move. Bishop f8 is threatened, and this queen needs to find safety.
Yeah, but at the same time, rook b8 is another idea, right? Bring the rook to the open file. So Magnus trying to...
c4 is hanging? Oh, rook d7 might be a party on the 7th rank.
Rook d8.
Ah, ouchtown. I didn't even see that, everybody. If queen takes, rook d8 check, and we will be going to
actually, I can still protect. Queen c5. But the big issue is that I've taken on f8. I mean, I can just leave the position forever.
Yeah. And black is also frozen right now, so that's the other issue.
But I can also just take and then take your a pawn and get an outside pass.
So Hikaru doesn't want to be frozen, but he is getting down on time, right? He needs to let it go. Hashtag first Frozen reference.
I was going to...
Boom! Let it go. That's my first ever Frozen reference on the chess show.
I was going to make it too. I'm very upset with you. I say he may be frozen. He's letting his time go, but
he needs to let it go. He needs to let it go of the last game and stop stressing out. He needs to do that scene where Elsa just pulls the bow out and just whips her hair down. You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I know you know what I'm talking about.
Why didn't you go rook d8 there? Maybe queen d1 check was the idea somehow. Trading a weird queen trade.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. Yeah.
But I don't know because now Hikaru, he can't play bishop g7 because rook d8 check. So
there's a threat now. Rook d7 is a problem. Hikaru is thinking, and he's down on time. He's got to play c5, which is just sort of an ugly move to guard this square. But I think it's
pawn to h4 for white. Maybe just start putting pressure on.
I think c5 is forced. But again, the issue is time. Hikaru is shaking his head. He's frustrated with the time management, and I think that's where we're going to see the difference
Queen
made?
B1
Oh, he's
check.
got check and queen f5. A perfect flipping of the script, because if he can defend this,
Nice.
even with rook takes f7, once he trades and rook takes, that rook is trapped
Wait,
on
but now
f6.
the bishop. Yeah, you're right. It's a queen f5.
Yeah. If rook takes, rook takes, you guard the e6 pawn, and the rook is at least sort of out of play, right? You have to see rook f4.
Right.
So I think that Hikaru is sort of put the question to
And
Magnus.
after rook f4, you can go rook back to b8 and then take
then
over
grab
the
the
b file,
file.
get the a pawn. No,
Players are defending like just, I mean,
this is the second time we've seen Hikaru sacrifice a pawn. Remember?
to go, and he ended up winning that game. That's right.
Oh.
Holding on to the bind on the king side is Magnus Carlsen. He'd rather have a bind than the pawn. Hashtag Dvoretsky, rest in peace. That is the Dvoretsky School of Chess. It is the correct school of chess.
Unfortunately, that bind does not look like
Yeah,
it'll
it
last
may
for
not
too
keep
long.
it, because if this rook starts getting out and this king finds it safe, this f6 pawn may be overextended. Very, very tricky
And
stuff
how
here.
does? Okay, he's immediately going out for this. Makes sense.
Switching back to the view of the scoreboard, reminding those who just joined us right now, Magnus Carlsen has a 3-game lead in the match. If you don't know the Chess.com interface, look at the numbers right here next to the username. You see the Magnus logo. You see so that will also tell you the total score in the match throughout, as well as our view here, which tells you the total time left in the 3 minutes is 33 minutes. So what's happening, partner?
So it looks like both sides of a passed pawn on the queen side. Rook c2 here, getting behind the pawn, is not enough because the pawn will go to c7, where it is protected by that bishop on g3. So unfortunately for Hikaru, it looks like he's going down in this one. That would be a 4-game deficit.
He's going to get the pawn to a3.
e5. Yeah, he's resigned. He's throwing in the towel. Yep.
Why?
And Nualita again as the top. Well,
We have looked into the account of Nualita because we like to know who everybody is. Nualita, we know, is a grandmaster currently active on our site, currently deciding to use an anonymous username for whatever reason. But Hikaru is down 4 games. That's the only reason that really matters in this match. And he is...
he's not looking good.
He's not happy, right? I mean, he's had a couple games that should have been for surely gone the other way that he blew. Those are the ones really hard to let go. And then overall, he's just gotten outplayed in the close positions.
What's going on here with this pawn situation? If you went knight takes e5, was that so bad? I mean, I don't know. I'm never
Dude,
quite
you're
certain.
asking me to calculate. I'm not here to work. You know that. I'm here to mess around. No, but seriously, it's a 4-game lead right now for the world champion. So those who picked Magnus Carlsen to be the favorite here are looking good. Not to say that the match is over in the least. We still know the bullet portion is coming, which is where the gloves will come off.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Hikaru has to stop the bleeding. He cannot go down any more games. He's down 4 right now. That might be an insurmountable lead. If he goes in the bullet, 4 games is a heck of a lot, especially considering how well Magnus has played. I mean, at least on the scoreboard against Alexander Grishuk, he won like 8-1 or something in the bullet.
Yeah, he surprised everybody with his performance in the bullet. That is the truth, and we'll see if he does so again against Magnus Carlsen, against Hikaru Nakamura.
And here, Magnus is trying to unleash his pieces against Hikaru. Hikaru's pieces do look a little weird. The knight on b1 has yet to move. The bishop on b2, it looks nice, but it also faces a real challenge from that bishop on g7. And so if you're white, you're already facing ideas like bishop to g4 and things like that. The knight wants to come to d3. So
These are the kind of positions that can get very tricky for white really fast, because whenever you have a pawn here, everybody, and there's no knight here defending the king side, it means you got to always be careful about the king, because if these pieces start quickly jumping all over the king side, you may not have time to recover. And so Hikaru is figuring a way out of that. He's not exactly sure why Magnus sacrificed his queen.
Well, if you got the 2 rooks, so on paper that's a good sign. But
Hikaru feels like there's
the
some
knight comes to
chances here.
d6 or a5 actually.
You can tell by his facial expressions. And we've just been told by our the live server architect, we reached 26,000 active members in the live server for the first time just now, and there are 3,000 people following this game in Chess.com, not even including the viewers on Twitch.
Yeah, so we have a great viewership right now in a fantastic match. And right now, I'm not sure I like what has just happened here for Hikaru. It seemed like at the beginning of this transition from purely even material to a position with 2 rooks for the queen that I thought Hikaru had a good setup. Now I'm not liking it so much at all. For example, bishop takes. If you go bishop c4, I'll take with the knight. I think I want to keep my knight on the board, and unfortunately, well, maybe bishop takes d6, pawn takes d6, and then rook to d7. Just trying to corral that pawn. You will get it, but you might lose the e4 or the b7 pawn in the process.
It's amazing Carlsen's instinct. Those who can watch the show on instant replay, I mean, when we go back to that, I remember that Hikaru launched this trap, and Carlsen just chopped the rooks instantly. Like, no hesitation. Now, he could have been calculating it on Nakamura's turn. That's probably what he was doing. But I would be a little bit more nervous before going for a material imbalance of a queen versus a couple rooks. But not Magnus Carlsen. That was impressive stuff right there for sure.
Absolutely. And look at the clock situation. Magnus is really taking a deep think. Only 48 seconds, it seemed like he spent on that move. And for Hikaru, you can...
Yeah, what's the question? Can we take here? I mean, if you take, shake and bake, we get bishop takes g... No, rook is hanging.
Yep.
So what's the deal?
Yeah, you can probably do it. I think in the initial position is exactly what
he does it. Okay, yeah. So I was calculating that. Magnus has a furrowed brow right now. I think that was just a blunder.
Well, he's probably hoping the opposite colored bishops help him, but in fact, it often hurts you.
With the queens, because the opposite colored bishops can favor the queen to.
But now rook takes f2 check.
That's a very strong threat. Rook takes f2 check, followed by bishop takes with check. Everybody, followed by queen hanging. So that's the threat right now.
Okay, but the queen can move somewhere. Let's say to
G4 is a considerable. Whoa, he missed it. No, he's got a trap. If rook takes f2, everybody takes. He plays king f3.
Well, that's just a draw.
Well, I mean, I think he's happy with the draw right now. He laughs in the face of danger, Simba.
And look at this. Magnus playing for a win. Bishop is coming to h4 now, and after that, black is winning.
Hikaru shaking his head, dejected, upset with his play, and rightfully so. What can Nakamura do? You know what he can do? He can do nothing because the bishop comes to h4 and f2 is falling. Wow, town. Mind-blown town.
Woo!
Population, this guy.
A 5-game lead.
5 games right now, and this is exactly what Magnus Carlsen wanted, exactly what Hikaru Nakamura did not want. The train is running off the tracks, and he needs to, as you said, stop the bleeding. You've got to strike back with a couple draws. You got to slow down the train that is Magnus Carlsen so that you can hold your own in bullet at this point if you're Hikaru Nakamura. He needs a big win yesterday. We'll see if he can come up with it.
And look at that face. He scrunched his nose. He just looks totally just uncomfortable given the circumstances. When's the last time Hikaru Nakamura has been down 5 points in a blitz session? Well, the answer might be that secret match between Magnus and Hikaru way back in the day when they played in in the hotel.
No one really knows. There have been legends. There have been rumors that match was won big time by the world champion, but
that seems to be the consensus. But we have no
verifiable proof, right? No verifiable proof. But right now, Magnus seems to be flexing his muscles in blitz. There were, again, I think the score could have been closer, but coulda, woulda, shoulda is not what matters. I could have been a contender, and I'm not a contender. So that's the thing, right? And that was hey, not once have you come over for coffee or tea.
And an interesting stat to pull up as you crack me up here is that players are 3-0 collectively when giving away their queen. It seems like the player that either somehow loses or actively gives it away.
Hikaru blundered his queen and then somehow came back and won. Magnus has given away his queen voluntarily a couple times and won that game. So Hikaru eats a snack. Good choice. We'll ask him what it was. He's taken some Gatorade.
I think some almonds. I'm guessing almonds.
Almonds, right? I don't know. Hikaru seems like a pistachio guy. Because who wants to eat something that has the word pea and nuts in it, right?
If no one wants that,
we want pistachios. That's right.
That was a funny commercial.
So what we have here is a better position for white. Carlsen is just focused in right now. He hasn't moved his hand from his mouth, and Nakamura a little more animated right now. Carlsen just zoned in. That's a fact.
Yeah, absolutely. And here, the position, all 8 pawns still remain on the board, and that means the position is quite closed in nature. Now, one file is opened up. It's the A file, and If you're black, well, you've just lost control of the A file. You're hoping. That
Yeah, what?
you can,
I don't know what that was about.
Maybe C5 is coming again.
Or even B5 if you want the light squares, but maybe no, you're right. C5 is taking
pin.
advantage of a pin right here, everybody, and the point is taking with tempo runs into an intermezzo,
And then you lose the bishop.
and then
on
you lose the
C3.
bishop. So Carlsen can't do that. He plays Rook D1. Want to remind everybody, please get involved with the show on Twitter, too. Hashtag Blitz Battle. If you go to chess.com/TV, the Twitter chat is built right into the chat, just a simple click away. So if you're not using chess.com, get a free membership and go ahead and get involved on Twitter with the hashtag Blitz Battle. We'll read some of your tweets on air. What's going on here?
So the point is if bishop takes d4, it looks like it picks up the pawn on d4, but the e7 pawn is also hanging.
Yeah.
Alternatively, black could think about going queen c6 check and picking off the pawn on c4. So
Which is what I was looking at, but okay, so
wow.
But Nakamura likes this position.
I like it
tell
too.
I can tell by the way he's using his body language. That furrow brow right there, believe it or not, that is not a frustrated Hikaru. That's his old trick number 5, kind of scrunching in but actually happy with his position. Magnus looking to maybe bail out. Queen takes e2, knight takes. No. Hikaru says, I'm happy.
Oh, that is a nice move.
Oh, that's a brilliant move. After takes, we have double attack on knight and bishop.
Exactly, and that transition to that endgame is great for black. So rook to c1, keeping that tension. It looks funny. The queens have been under attack, but look at this. Rook c8, he's gained the open file because if the rooks trade, black is up this b pawn, and black is going to remain up this pawn for the time being. Rook's well played by Hikaru.
The real issue
Nice
I have
C4.
right now is I've seen this story before. I've been to this dog and pony dance. Hikaru has had huge advantages in the endgame and not converted. He's done it twice.
Pawn b6 here, Danny. and
He's up a pawn, but if Magnus holds this one,
That
it's
would
going to
be-
be another huge blow for Hikaru.
That would be heartbreaking for Hikaru. Pawn to e4 here. Why not? Use the bishop, open that. Okay, he's rerouting it this way. I personally would have went for e4 because you would have stopped this exact plan. But okay, you can sit your bishop on c5. Your rook is great where it is. Okay, now you have to move it back somewhere.
Yeah, I got to retreat, but still, okay, you're right. I mean, you're up a healthy pawn, but Magnus is defending. He's a tenacious defender, and he's proved it several times already. He's just coordinating and making life difficult for the American. This pawn has not gone far. And Hikaru's got to figure out how to use his advantage without letting things slip tactically. Time also is in the favor of the Norwegian right now. Only a minute for Hikaru, 2 minutes left for Carlsen.
And it's exactly what we said in the preview show. Hikaru has to take home the full points that are on the board from him. And this is one of them. Yes, it might not be completely winning. It's very rare that you're going to be completely, absolutely winning. But you have such an advantage here, and you need to make sure that Magnus suffers. Mm-hmm. And so...
And he's tried to, I mean, that position he had with the close and the king more dominant, that was one you had to convert, right? I mean, so this is a little tough right now. Hikaru knows it's tough. Magnus playing quickly. Hikaru is trying to think of the best way to coordinate. But Magnus's position has improved. Black's has not. And that is the story so far right now.
So what to do here? Pawn to f5 is definitely a thought. The idea being that I'm going to try to go e4 with check and bring my knight into the action.
Hikaru zones in there.
B5, but now bishop c3 was what I was a bit.
Yeah, there may be tactics on
just
the
f6. You can always go.
bishop c3, hitting the king. If f6, so this seems really dangerous, everybody. And I guess Magnus says he doesn't want to deal with the tactics, just sort of solidifies the knight there. But there really were no clear discoveries for Black. I like that move, though.
Yes,
That's
sure.
exactly what Black needed to do. Forget about tactics on the d-file. This rook needs to be poking fun on one of these ranks if Black is going to have any chance to win this game.
Yeah, and a move like king to c2, you just go f6, you defend the pawn e5. Look at the rooks now. White's rook is passive, defending against the passed b pawn. Black's rook is very active, trying to go into the action. So a move like knight c7 here, yep, there it is.
That's a very good move. He's threatening knight e6.
Pawn to b4.
Hikaru.
Pawn to b4.
Hikaru is thinking about it. I'm thinking. I
There it
like
is.
it. Mikey likes it. He takes his opportunity to play like Bobby Hess. But is that a blunder?
So two options here. One is rook a5.
Right. I guess it does hold on to the bishop.
Rook takes f3 is tempting, even though it might sacrifice a piece. What? Oh, rook c7.
Oh, he picks it back up with rook c7. I
you-
almost came out of my chair on that one.
Yeah. Wow. You freaked out for a second.
I
there.
mean, I didn't freak out. I did one of these.
Yeah.
Let's see instant replay. Right?
So king b3, rook takes c5. The problem is you can't go king takes b4.
Why not?
Two reasons. One, rook b5, pinning the bishop and the rook, and the other was rook c2, just going after all the pawns. In fact, this bishop...
but it looks still like Magnus is defended once again.
I think he's going to lose.
I love his chances to hold this endgame. Knight here, I'm going to stop it. If you check, I'll trade, and now I win the king and pawn ending.
But I would just say f5 is...
Okay, but still, are you winning f3, really?
Knight d4? Knight e2, Bueller.
Okay, you have this, Bueller.
Knight e2. I'm going to take on f4, king e6, king f5. Game over.
Don't talk to me like that. Don't put me down. No, I'm kidding. You're right. You're always right.
Well, actually, sorry, I should not say game over. That is really...
This is actually still very difficult to win. It's a game that only black can win. And Hikaru is safely out of even Blunderville.
But some of these endings, you can trade the minor pieces and then draw with the pawn down.
With weird stalemates.
But right now...
Right now, that is not happening.
He's doing the right plan. Yep, he's got it.
Yeah, he's focused in on the H-pawn without committing any of these. The knight's advantage over the bishop, everybody, on one side of the board is massive.
Yes.
Because the knight can maneuver and really take his time getting to the right color square. The white king is now...
Why did he move it?
I don't know.
What he should do, and what you were saying is right, the knight can go on both squares, but if he puts his king back there, puts his knight on f3, he can just start pushing his G and H pawns, and at the right moment, that doesn't win.
Oh, you can't take on H2. So that would have been sweet if you were right, but...
Unfortunately, I'm wrong.
Okay, he has H6. I would have maybe played H6 and just kind of sat a little more, but...
He'll go H5, H4. At some point, he can consider even going H3 in the right moment. Because if the king has to go to H1, you can actually have mating ideas.
Is this a draw or is it winning?
I think it's
Somebody
winning.
give me the analysis. I am...
H4 now.
Get this man a doctor. I am freaking out right now.
It's winning. H4. Okay, he's making me sweat a little bit.
He's playing tickle here. Hikaru needs to convert. He's down too much time to waste, but I guess he's not sure. He's shaking his head a little bit. He's happy, but he's not happy, right? He's somewhere in between our two favorite people right now. Our two favorite people just came by to join the show. Hi, everybody. It's me, happy Hikaru and frustrated Hikaru.
No,
Angry
H4.
Hikaru.
H4 now.
He's somewhere in between these two guys. They're best friends, believe it or not.
H4. He has to move his pawn. Go H4.
I don't know what he has to do. I'm just here to learn.
Look, I'm trying to teach you. H4.
Okay.
I go H3. Black puts the pawn on H3.
Okay.
Brings the knight around to E2, right? Once you... Oh, I'm not winning there either. Darn it.
I love you, Bobby, but
I
don't know that you're going to win this.
No,
I think that Magnus is going to hold
At
this.
some point, right here is when I thought I was winning. Right there. Because I go H4, H3, and then threaten G3, and there's nothing you can do
What
about
happens?
it.
So bishop E8, you want H4.
Yes.
And then what?
H3.
I move.
H3.
Okay, and then I move.
G3. Game over.
And bishop takes?
Knight takes.
Little swindle dindle. You silly SO, you know what.
Although that somehow might still be a draw if you sack the bishop. Let's go back to the live game. But if you sack the bishop, so H4.
He has to play H4 and H3.
But now the problem is now if he goes H4, the king is not cut off. The king will just run to H1 and make a draw.
The problem with Hikaru's situation here, everybody, on a practical level, is he's wasting so much time in the match. We have a running clock. There is only 16 minutes left in the 3-minute, and the American is down 5 games right now. He's beaten himself too many times to sit here and spend all this, almost like you just want to draw and give yourself a chance to win again.
Well, maybe he thinks that once he gets to the bullet,
he'll have an advantage. That's the other match strategy to think about. Look at Magnus forcing the corner pawn. Yeah. Forcing the corner pawn. Hikaru shakes his head. Magnus has been so patient. He's been patiently waiting for a track to explode on.
I'm ignoring you.
Look at the amount of guesses. People are playing Guess the Move like it's going out of style. Go to chess.com/live, make a free username, and then try to guess what the players are doing while we're talking, because there are more than 500 users currently playing the game.
That ending was still a draw, by the way. That knight takes G3. You just take with the bishop. Knight takes G3 with check. King G1. And that ending.
And you stalemate yourself.
Yeah, it's a corner draw.
How frustrating is that?
It's a corner draw. That it must be horrible.
Our first Berlin of the game. Does someone have a running bet? What was the over/under before we would see the Berlin? If you guessed before an hour and 45 minutes, or more than that, I guess. I've lost my ability to do math.
2 hours and 25
2 hours and 25 minutes, then you win the Berlin competition. But
we've seen this a lot in classical games between elite players. I mean, really not much for white. You can get the 2 bishops with ease. Knight f5 to e7 check is what's going to happen. And the point is that white, without risking anything whatsoever, gets 2 bishops, which is nice in open positions. The problem is this position is not so open, and the knight is not so badly placed. And then we see in development, black's rooks are connected. White still has some development issues going b3 or d3 and then bringing the bishop out. So,
we've seen this position played a lot in over-the-board, super GM level chess. So this is a position, unlike a lot of the King's Indian positions we've seen, this is one they both know theoretically very, very well. Although now we're kind of, getting into the roads less traveled. But Hikaru kind of flexing the bishop pair muscles on the king side. Things are...
Yeah, the knight will just sit on f7.
I guess there's just no dark square attacks. I mean, even if you go here, I go here. Even check does nothing. Black is just kind of safely guarding all of these squares here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So nothing to show for it right now. Hikaru agrees. He backs that thing up. Maybe relocate. I was just about to say relocate the bishop to a more fun home, and keep the game of chicken on the e-file going. White is still up the bishop pair, but as Robert pointed out, there's not a lot to show for it in a position that's really closed with some center pawns. Yeah. So much so that Magnus gets up and I was going to say, does he leave? No, he's just getting more water. He might want to manage his breaks, we'll say. But again, if you're just joining us right now, it's a big, big lead for the world champion. 5 games, which is huge. There's a lot of reasons that we could talk about why, but we're going to stay in the moment and own it. And right now, Nakamura needs to keep his fighting chances alive before the bullet portion sets in.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a reminder, we've guessed the move. It's fun. You just make the move on the board as the players are playing, and the person with the best guesses, who was most correct, at the end of this wins $250 and a lifetime diamond membership at Chess.com. And please note that as people are getting more tired as they guess moves, you have a better chance of being more accurate and right. And speaking of accuracy, it will take a lot of accuracy from Magnus Carlsen, perhaps, to defend this endgame, because we see white has a huge spatial advantage. At some point, white would love to bring that bishop back to g2.
But haven't we seen this rodeo? I mean, Magnus already defended a position where he was grinded down in the middle game by the bishop pair.
But look at these weak squares, right? It's a lot to do with. The bishop will come to g2. At some point, pawn to c4 is going to be tempting, and we're just trying to open up the queenside pawn structure. It's difficult because that pawn chain for black looks very nice.
Don't miss a fork. Mama always told me. Don't miss a fork. Probably now Hikaru's going to just play bishop g2 or queen e2. Both are sufficient. I guess I just feel more confident about black's position, not just because of what we've seen historically so far in the match, but because I don't see a clear plan for white to use the bishop pair. Look at that move, d4.
I don't like that move.
Whoa, making backward work of the pawns here, but as you said, it commits the pawn here. You didn't say it, but I assume that's why you don't like it. That's a move that really commits this pawn and opens up this diagonal. Interesting.
I wasn't certain about white's last move with bishop to g2 either. I would have tried to go f4 perhaps and try to go g4. You need to break open that light square bishop. The key is ending. Imagine the queens are traded. Just put them off the board. That bishop needs to get to c8 somehow and attack the pawn. So the bishop needs some open space. Right now, I still prefer...
And for all the less experienced chess players out there, to provide context to what my partner just said, it's really good, again, to think about the bigger picture. What do your pieces need to win the position? One way to do it is to look at the permanent targets. So Robert's trying to look for a way for white to open the position so that eventually these pawns that are stuck on light squares can become issues.
Pawn d4 now. It looks like... pawn
d4, knight takes.
I was trying to go queen c4 check and pin everything, but...
It's almost worth it anyway. It does look so dangerous for black, but okay. And Hikaru decides it's dangerous enough. And Magnus,
that was
a Magnus not happy. That was a
maybe queen a2 check, perhaps just trying to bring the king out a little bit.
If you get the king on the dark square diagonal, does that help you? That's the question. Or do you just what is going on here? Check a Ruski, knight back.
Danny,
what's the problem?
Take on d4. Knight d4, bishop takes.
Oh, you just take it.
And you win the bishop on c7.
Boomtown. Population you, Robert. I was testing you this whole time, and you barely passed.
I knew I had a good idea. I just didn't put all the pieces together.
You know what? I don't want to hear it. No, it's just, you're doing so good, buddy.
No, Magnus, look at him. He's holding head in his hand.
Seriously. Head in his hand. This is not head in palm, happy Magnus. This is head in face and hand. frustrated Magnus.
I don't think there's a way for Magnus to stop d5 from coming. Queen c4 and d5 can almost be pre-moved to a degree by Nakamura.
Because there's literally no way to deal with this threat.
Yes,
it's
no
coming.
Way. And once that pawn goes to d5, that bishop opens up. It's
Yep.
I mean,
and this is again a game Carlsen or Nakamura has to convert. He has to convert on these opportunities, as he has not done so far in the match. What a nice move.
Queen
This is
e5
a very
comes.
simple way to use the battery of the queen and bishop. And if the move d4 is played, bishop d5 is lights out.
Yep, pinning the knight and then
Pinning
taking
the
on
knight,
d4
attacking everything, and it is over. Red Rover.
There it is. This is the comeback that Hikaru needs to re-enter the match. He had a frustrating period of time.
Oh, that's exactly what happened right there.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay.
He had a frustrating period of time where he just lost a bunch of... Look at the score in the 3-2 section. 4-1.
4-1, yeah.
in
No, I
match.
mean, again, that's been... He did do it before, back when the tiger was his avatar. We were having camera issues. Maybe he needs to metamorphosize back into the tiger if you're Hikaru.
I don't think it was Tiger. I think it was the Florida Panthers, the hockey team.
Oh,
Because
okay. I don't know my...
if you know anything about Hikaru, he's a huge hockey fan, and he's a big Florida Panthers fan.
Queen g7 check is not lights out.
Not yet.
Queen g7, why not? King here, check.
And then knight f8.
I'm not just winning on queen f7 and bishop b6.
Maybe start with bishop b6, actually.
What in the world?
Yeah. So queen g7, king e8, queen g8 check, knight f8, bishop b6.
Queen g7, king e8, queen check, knight
bishop
here,
b6.
queen check.
I think bishop first.
Bishop b6 first.
Just
Okay,
cutting
trap
you off.
him.
Yeah.
Keep that
now
king
b7.
right where
You can't protect b7.
Yeah,
can't keep
I think Hikaru agrees with us. Looks like it's
And
what
here
he's
it
going
comes.
for. And just like that, as we skip back to the real game, things are the wheels are coming off for Magnus on this one. Hikaru, okay, bishop b6 is actually met by bishop takes b4. Not only does Carlsen win a pawn, but he actually defends the threat of f7.
It's a good
And
point.
Hikaru just gave the I cannot believe this. I'm so frustrated that my opponent is Magnus Carlsen look.
Yes.
That was like, he was like, what? How am I not just winning here? And Magnus continues to sort of...
I think he is just winning, though.
Bishop f6 also, right? If takes with check?
Yeah, but perhaps after bishop f6, use queen e8 or something.
Yeah, this is a game that that you have to win.
I don't know if I agree with bishop to b3. I thought bishop f3 was better, but there's going to be some...
Keeping an eye here.
Yeah, just keep an eye there. Queen c4 check makes sense.
Yeah, it seems like there should
queen
still be
c6.
no way
Okay, see...
but a win for...
But we did see in that game with the two bishops where it looked like white was just going to win, that he somehow lost. So right now, okay, queen...
This is a move?
h8.
No.
It looks like a move.
No, because takes, he blocks.
I was going to just take back on b6 with the pawn and just boomtown.
Frustrated. Frustrated I am.
Wait a second.
Takes if knight d7.
Then queen g8 mate.
Okay, so there you go. So Carlsen's run of defending this lost position seems to be finally
F3.
coming to an end after f3 or king h3.
Yeah.
Both.
Nice. Queen
That's
c7
a very
is
nice
mate.
move. What? Look at Hikaru just frustrated with that.
Of course he's frustrated.
You see the look right there. He was just like, "How is this not over right
But
now?"
knight f8,
Magnus?
he's going to go queen f7 now. So he's going to maneuver his
Okay,
pieces.
he's
Bishop
okay.
e6.
Queen e8 is mate, and that's the
Okay.
first time so far in the match. Everybody, everyone knows I've been waiting for this opportunity. Go, you ring it, partner. Whenever someone gets checkmated on this show, they get their bell rung, and we like to take advantage of that
And
opportunity.
it's hilarious that I didn't see checkmate in one. I said bishop e6, also probably winning. But
Right,
checkmate
right,
in
but
one
checkmate
obviously
in one
is...
was good enough to have some fun. Well, again, okay, so that's a big game that stops the bleeding,
Yes.
starts to head the match back in the direction that, at least within striking distance. I don't think a 4-game deficit is overcome in bullet. I said I thought that a 3-game deficit
did,
was
yeah.
before the match. We'll see if I'm wrong. But right now, with a 4-game lead, okay, the score has not quite been updated yet, but a 4-game lead for Magnus Carlsen is a little bit more manageable, right, for Nakamura than 5-game. But I think he needs to get that to. I think he needs to win this game to have a chance in bullet.
Yeah, he needs to perform well. I think what will in the bullet will all come down to his momentum.
Yes.
And for Hikaru Nakamura, winning that game is obviously pushing him on the right track. But in the bullet section, even if you're up 4 points, if you win 2 games in a row, it really frustrates your opponent. And I even know from experience from my death match with Fabiano Caruana,
right.
At one point I won 3 bullet games in a row, and all of a sudden you start feeling it. Everything's going really well. And obviously Fabiano is a much better player relative to me than the difference between Carlsen and Nakamura in terms of classical chess. So,
No, you're right. We have seen. I'll ask Stat Guy to remind me of the biggest deficit, but I'm pretty sure we've seen a 4-game. We have seen 4 games overcome, so it is possible We may have even seen 5 games overcome, but 4 games for sure. So let's see. According to our stat, that last Berlin we saw was the 2 of these players completely copying their game from the Singfield Cup back in 2013 until Black's 18th move. So that was just a little fun fact to take home for the more serious chess players. What's going on here for players of all levels? We have Magnus Carlsen trying to use the C file. Hikaru Nakamura, a little bit, he needs to figure this out right now. He's focused in because he wants to take, but he doesn't really like what's happening next with his knight having to find a new home and the C file becoming open. So Hikaru's thinking about it, but this has been the story of the show so far. Can he continue to allow himself to get on time?
And there's not really that many other options because now B7 is also under attack, right? So the point is that B7 and the knight on C6 are under attack. If your queen takes D3, which perhaps is what he's looking at, but yeah, just can't spend this much time. It's really not a good sign for Hikaru.
Somehow the Twitch chat is being spammed by something we've never quite seen before. I apologize for that to everybody who's having to experience that. But hopefully the moderators will get in there and take care of some business there.
Yeah, it's pretty bad there. And now they're switching up, where they say, Danny, they like you, and now they say, Robert, they like me. So I'm getting some love as well.
I don't know. I think it was all about me, buddy.
No, then I saw Robert. Just let it happen. But anyway, back to the chess. It looks like Hikaru just scooped up a pawn on A3.
Right.
Now, just by the look of the position, if you weren't counting pieces, it looks like white is doing extremely well. The rook on the C file is barreling down at the knight on C6 through the bishop on C4, and through all of that, the pawn on C7. However, a pawn is a pawn. The B4 pawn also can be a target.
Right.
And the knight on B6 does really well to protect that bishop on C4, and not to mention the bishop will go to B5, protecting the knight on C6. So everything under control for Hikaru Nakamura. Look at the face right there, Danny. Which number is that?
Oh, oh my gosh, that's a rare sighting. An animal caught in the wild. Nakamura, number 12.
Well, we have Nakamura, number 12. Thumb on beard.
On Nakamura. That's
and
right.
He just,
That's a
soul.
wallaby running about right there. That is look at the facial hair, too. I think Hikaru's preparing for No Shave November.
Yeah.
But Magnus, too. But this is potentially Magnus just calculated something very deep look. You see that?
Uh-oh.
He stepped in and see how quickly he moved all the rest of the moves. Magnus calculated something very deep, is headed to an angle where he's up the bishop pair. And you see Hikaru did the head nod, which is something he does when he wants to think he's confident, but he's actually not quite sure.
Yeah.
And Magnus had calculated that entire thing. I'm telling you, I'm more confident than anything I've ever been in my life.
So Jan Ludwig Hammer, who is our good friend here at Chess.com, tweeted, Hikaru shows he can outplay the world's best player, but Magnus has an uncanny ability to salvage positions. And I think it's very
so
accurate.
true. I think it's a good point. I mean, so Hikaru has proven to himself, I think he knows he's capable of outplaying Magnus, even though Magnus is winning more games. The problem is, as Hammer said, when he does, Carlsen has still held on. And
what just happened there? So it looks like Magnus sacrificed, or wasn't? Yeah, he sacrificed.
Yeah, but he's got the bishop pair, and that's...
It's very annoying deal. The bishop's coming to F8.
So crazy, right? But I got the A pawn underlined. I got, this is a game that, despite the pawn advantage, seems like it's still under White's control, right? With the two bishops pointing, you have a rook in a dominant position on the 7th rank, and time is equal here, roughly.
Yes.
That's a good thing to note, because it may end up being the last time we play a 3-minute game. I will ask our staff members to stay on top of that. Please let me know. I will inform the players once we're officially sure that this is the last 3-minute game.
So the question in this position is, if, let's say, now knight b5 is coming, but if you take on b5, pawn takes a6, a7, is that just simply winning for white because the passed pawn is protected by the bishop on e3? Now black doesn't look like he's in time to save his position, in fact, after knight b5. So instead it goes for knight f5, trying to get opposite colored bishops. That is probably his best chance to survive.
We're getting a little bit spammed again in the Twitch chat. Remind the staff members to please jump in there and help. Whoever's spamming, please stop. And I'm just asking you as a human being to not do that. Okay, so what's happened here? Hikaru has swindled a little bit of the pressure away, but the A-pawn is falling in the process. It looks like we are 30 seconds away from moving on to where everybody will find out the truth, right? Hikaru Nakamura may end up even proving he's the better bullet player
Wow, what a decision there by Carlsen, keeping the pressure on the A-pawn and trying to use the H-pawn to go down the board. However, I think at some point, for example, if the white king starts trying to enter the frame by going over to the queen side, then the black rook gets out and starts giving checks, will try to go behind the A-pawn and perhaps take some of white's pawns. So I think this game,
though. That might have been like one of those just shocking Carlsen decisions that ends up seeming weird, but is actually something that ends up winning the game. It's actually the end of the 3-2 portion, and now we have just this game left before we move on to the final series of play, which will be the bullet. I will inform the players officially now that this is their last 3-minute game.
Yeah, it's the last 3-minute game. It looks like it should be a draw here with best play, unless I'm just mistaking this. Yes, white has this H-pawn, which is quite annoying to deal with, but look at Hikaru trying to break up the pawn structure. And there he is. He sits the king on F5.
Yeah, very, very nice. I agree.
And now the point is there's no behind checks for white. So the king is now cut off, the white king, that is. Black is waiting until white commits that pawn to A7, because once that happens, there's going to be pretty much no winning chances to speak of. So he does it.
There he goes. Well, now it's officially going to be a draw. Ooh, okay.
So I just go king G7. Actually, that's a problem. Well, is it a problem? King G7?
No, even if you just sit on the 5th rank and drop the F-pawn, it's a draw. Because you can't force the king out of this corner unless you have the F-pawn as the extra pawn, right? That forces away the tricks.
Right. And I think what black does is shuffles king G7, king H7 forever.
Yeah, shuffle, shuffle.
And then I'll just keep my rook in the A file, protect F4 if you attack me with the king.
Hikaru's trying to think. That's how much respect Hikaru has for Magnus's endgame, just his knowledge of it. So Hikaru is nervous about what's going to happen here with the king coming forward. So he's trying to make sure that he's not misremembering theoretical rook endings, make sure he's not choosing to go into a rook ending that is lost. So he has to be very careful.
But what's going to happen is at some point this king is going to try to go to F6, right? King E6 now?
King E6, King G7.
And then I go rook D8?
That's a trade into the king and pawn ending. I see what you're trying to do.
I don't necessarily have to go through D8. I can wait until your king moves and I can go to F6. Right? King H7, King F6 is, or just H6 even. Yeah, this is winning.
It's still not winning.
King H7. Sorry, H6.
I still don't think it's winning even with the win of that pawn.
Why?
Because now what?
I take your F pawn and run my F pawn down the board. It's a rook endgame with 3 extra pawns.
Really?
H6 check. King H7. Okay, go H6 next move. It doesn't matter.
Oh, it's 6-1.
Exactly.
Wow.
I just take F4 and then it's over. So
wow. That is a... Oh, man. That's it. Break time.
Wow. So...
I am simply blown away right now, as is Hikaru Nakamura. Frustrated with himself. Down 5 games heading into the bullet portion. I said I thought it needed to be 3 games, right? I thought that it was possible that that 3 games could be overcome by Nakamura because he's that good in bullet, but he's gonna need to just greatly impress in the bullet portion.
Yeah, down 5 games in the bullet, heading into the bullet portion. That's a tremendous lead for Magnus Carlsen. So we just ended the 3-minute and 2-second increment section. Magnus Carlsen up 10.5 to 5.5 for Hikaru Nakamura. However, this is Hikaru's best segment. He is an amazing, absolutely exceptional bullet player, the likes of which I don't think have ever been seen before, Danny. I think you'd agree with that.
Yep.
Hikaru, and he feels at home on Chess.com, especially in bullet. So, Magnus, how many games do you think they can fit in? That's the first important question, right? How many games can these 2 players fit in before the match is over?
Because you have to be able to fit, statistically, what do we normally get? 10 to 12?
Yeah.
So that means if you're Hikaru Nakamura, you would have to go...
You have to go 9 to 3 to win. If we get 12 games, 9 to 3 to win, 8.5
right.
to 3.5 to just to tie.
You would have to get on a serious roll. If it is tied at the end, overtime decides the match, which we will remind you of the rules if that seems to be close to a possibility. But right now, given how Magnus has played this match, his resourcefulness when under fire.
Yep.
Hikaru's inability to convert on some of those games. And the fact, because if this was we'll see what ends up happening. If it ends up being a 3-4 game swing to Hikaru, then maybe in the end it'll be kind of what we thought, and Hikaru had his chances earlier and didn't convert as we picked. If Magnus shows that he's much better at bullet than the world knows, and beats Hikaru at his own game.
Yeah, and Nakamura did get 13 bullet games in a semifinal matchup against Maxime Vacher-Lagrave, so it is possible to get a number of games in here, but Magnus Carlsen does not seem like the type of player, of course he's the world champion, to lose 5 games in a bullets portion, or -5 I should say in that bullet portion. So for Hikaru Nakamura is on the line now. He needs to win that first game. He needs to get that confidence going. He needs to just get on a roll of some kind, because as we've seen, Magnus is so resourceful. He has been able to stave off Nakamura in many a worse, if not lost, position.
Absolutely. I've been like, right now. I mean, that has just been, Magnus Carlsen has played phenomenally resourceful chess. Hikaru has beaten himself a few times too many, and with that, we have a 5-game lead. We are about to start. I've been told and confirmed that normally it's about 9 to 10 bullet games, which would probably not be enough for Nakamura.
No.
Against MVL, Hikaru did play 13 games apparently, but they had some quick games.
Yeah.
So we will see how many bullet games are left. We have 30 minutes left in the total game clock. The moment the action kicks off, we will start that, and we are simply patiently waiting now for the final session to start. Hikaru has taken out the headphones. No more music. Magnus still in snack mode and headphone mode, and we're about to find out. The world has been waiting to see what would happen between these two players in bullet. I'm pretty excited about it. You're pretty excited about it. We got everything in the world that is happening here, and just like that, let's stay on the view that allows us to see everything at once and start the clock. 30 minutes of bullet chess. It has begun, right? Like, it has begun, Shao Kahn. It has begun, and what do we have here? We have Hikaru Nakamura on the... Whoa, are we about to win very quick? Is Queen of 5 just like lights out?
Yeah, Queen of 5 forces knight to d7, I think.
It's bullet, and it's just 960. Magnus just did the old... I didn't see that. Oops. Yeah, so knight to d7 is forced, and then he's going to have to try to...
bishop g4, and I mean... Or maybe not bishop g4.
I probably just grab the pawn, right, and then...
this is a bad start for Magnus. It looks like Hikaru feeling more comfortable in the 960 portion thus far.
Well, it's also just it's easy to blunder early in chess 960 because the positions are weird. Now, why didn't he just gobble up a7? I don't know. Decides he wants coordination over that second pawn.
Yep, pawn d4 was an option there. It still is an option now.
The thing is, we've been playing a lot of 5-minute and 3-minute, where the story has been Magnus Carlsen up on time more and his resourceful defensive skills, right?
Yes.
2 major stories, we agree?
Absolutely.
Will that continue? Will Hikaru flex the bullet muscles we know he has? Will Magnus prove he's better at bullet than people? I don't know. Who knows? We're about to find out some weird things.
Not really loving what Hikaru's done in the last bunch of
things
moves.
have kind of been...
Okay,
whoa.
He's still better because his pawn center is nice, and that pawn on b4 might become a vulnerability.
I don't know. I mean, is he really better? Magnus is kind of...
king c7 now. Actually, you might be right. He might be escaping by the hair on his chinny chin chin.
Who knows?
But I'm trying to figure out what to do exactly.
I'm not supposed to say who knows. They're like, you guys are supposed to know. I don't know. Well, who knows? I have no idea. This is, you better watch out for moves like b3, and then the queen on f8 jumps to life over here on the king side. But we only have a half an hour left. Don't go anywhere. Will we see an epic comeback from Hikaru Nakamura, or will Magnus Carlsen continue on the road he's been on? So far, just dominant in every portion of the match.
Whoa, so queen d4, he's just giving up this pawn. Some problem on the c file. Knight e5 hits his bishop on d3, but queen f6 check.
Yeah, but still, even with check, it looks super dangerous.
Yeah, because that...
Now, that was a nice move. That's it. No, it wasn't.
No, the king blocks the rook, so queen e3 now everything is safe, right?
Ah, you're right. 15 seconds, though. Remember, the bullet is... This is jam-packed action. We are already on the edge of our seats, everybody. If these players don't remember that, hey, you're playing bullet, not 3-minute.
Nice move.
Rook
now king e2. Queen on king e... Okay, king d2.
Okay, they both work, but still, this seems like a blunder about to happen for white. White is under a ton of pressure here.
There's a pin. How do you...
He's coordinating. Nakamura is trying to swindle his way
But
to
he's
some
down on the
coordination.
clock as well, which is not a good sign at all.
Not a good sign at all. Black is breaking through first, but will it be enough? All of a sudden, the queen and the knight are looking for some magic.
So knight b5 check.
Yeah, maybe
forces
a draw.
No,
Perpetual check.
Yeah, I was saying knight c7 check.
No?
What? What?
Magnus just
Would that-
he shakes his head and laughs.
Wow.
He shakes his head
No,
and
but
laughs.
that's huge. That is
It's
huge.
a huge win because it's exactly what Hikaru Nakamura needs. He takes a big sigh of relief, says, I can still win games against Magnus. Magnus needed to just take the draw there. That was just a blunder.
Yeah, I think he thought he was queening somehow.
But it was sort of the opposite of the stories we've seen so far, right?
Absolutely.
Usually Hikaru is pressing, Magnus right at the end swindles a win. In that case,
If the queen
Magnus should have won that
If
game.
the queen was in any other square, that would have been winning for black because
Yep.
they would have been promoting. But unfortunately, you just capture the pawn and it's over. And for Hikaru Nakamura, you need to play a little faster in this game, 55 seconds to just under a minute for Magnus.
Right.
And as the time goes down, we just saw that Hikaru has some steel nerves at times. And for Magnus, he needs to make sure he does not blunder like that again because that was horrible. Right now, it looks like the position is relatively level. It's a normal position. White is slightly better thanks to the offset knight on a5. We don't like knights on the rim. And the reason why is that, just think about mathematically, there are fewer squares to go to. That knight is only 4 squares under attack, whereas the knight in the center is 8. And right now, Hikaru expanding on the queen side and trying to take control of the dark squares.
Yep, he's got some control. But again, I still don't like the future of this pony unless you can manufacture c4.
But now you can take...
Okay, now you can get rid of that bad pony.
But you might want to... Sometimes you might want to leave the pony there now.
Yeah, because
exactly.
the knight, despite being on the edge, is actually sort of keeping the queen or the rook tied to the defense of the pawn.
And now the dark square control is very evident for black. And not to mention...
This is the kind of position I will say that is right up Hikaru's alley in the King's
sure.
Indian. He's probably played this position in bullet more times.
Oh, look at that move. B3.
Yeah, Hikaru knows, and in fact, if he organizes this knight to d4, Carlsen has some serious problems.
It goes to show the power of knights over some weak bishops. And that bishop
Right.
on g2 is a very defensive piece. It's boxed in. Whereas for g5 here by black, you got to stop the move f4. There it is. Right? Thematic.
Hikaru is flexing his bullet muscles right now. If he wins this game, you're looking at confidence seeping in, which is not what Magnus Carlsen wants.
Absolutely not.
Okay, is he
There
going
we
to
go.
organize an attack?
Queen opened the g file, right?
He opens the G file, but also Carlsen has grabbed
Rook
a majority.
A8. What is that?
Maybe he wants to run the A pawn. I don't know.
He absolutely does, but if he left his rook on B and gone rook G, I thought he was just making an attack. But yeah, this looks really slow by Magnus. So A2 here is probably possible, but maybe you don't want to let the pawn.
I have no. I mean, Hikaru feels confident in his plan, but
So
so does Magnus. Notice we can't. I have no idea what to say.
let's just think for a second.
Hikaru now is thinking.
So
Okay, he decides he has to defend, but that's a concession, right?
but
Now he has to defend the pawn.
he defends it, but the rook is still behind the A pawn, and A2 is a huge threat because the queen is also covering the A1 square. If you move that knight with check, you can capture an A1.
Ouch down, yep.
So rook A1, knight F3 check immediately picks up that rook.
Right, so something like this, everybody, a line Robert is pointing out is a move like this, and the queen goes to Gobbletown.
Right, absolutely.
Okay,
So-
but he finds a way to trick
he
with
took
the
a-
discovery. It's an exchange sack,
No,
but
this
it's
is-
probably enough for black to win.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is
Oh,
probably...
but watch out. Rook takes rook, and then queen b2 check.
Hikaru just blundered, and he just
king G8?
freaked out.
Yeah, he lost. He needed that game.
Yeah.
He had it. He needed it.
Hikaru has blown just a lot of opportunities, and that game right there, he literally just... That was a one-move blunder in a completely winning position.
Yeah, and wow. Just
Wow.
wow. And,
Yep.
for Magnus, when you get in lost positions, you have to play till the end because you want to get time off the clock.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Hikaru, you need to win and win quickly.
See, now Hikaru's back to where he's been. He's kicking himself emotionally for the last few games he couldn't win. From a professional perspective, one of the best skills you have to have is have short-term memory loss. You have to let it go and move on. But it's very difficult in this format where the games start back to back to back. You don't have a break.
Yeah, there's
And
no time to recover. your film.
Hikaru has got to be kicking himself right now.
Yeah, and there's huge psychological pressure for Hikaru because he's down 5 games, not that much time left on the clock. It's very difficult, but he's getting great
But you win that
positions.
game, and it's not 5, it's 3.
Of course.
It's
of
a
course.
completely different match, right?
course.
And that's a game that, you play rook c3 there instead of rook takes any
yeah.
move, and black is completely winning.
And he had enough time, it looked like. I don't think it was he didn't
No,
have
that's why
2 seconds
why
left.
he about lost it on camera, right? So now he's got to pull it
but now
together.
his-
He has
now
to
his
know
position's
that there
good.
is there is still a chance in the match. He's shown that he can play well in bullet, but Magnus has just got to bring down the clamps. For Magnus to win, he just has to keep being Magnus, give himself the opportunity right in the end, and that's what he's been doing all match. Look at the time. Look how fast both players are playing. It's like they're both just angry at the board.
Yeah, I mean,
they're playing so fast right now.
This looks problematic for black. Now, queen d8 for starters is going to be annoying. Here it is.
Yeah.
And if you go bishop d5, I can even consider just capturing on d5 and putting my bishop on e5 and say.
Hikaru's eyes still just do move a mile a minute in bullet, and so far he has shown he's doing well in bullet. He just hasn't converted. But bishop a4
yeah,
threatened.
bishop a4 was better.
Why didn't he do that? That would have threatened to have some nastiness. Okay, but.
What? Oh, okay, because d5 is hanging.
But Nakamura still thinks he has the clamps now. He plays h5, everybody. The queen can't take without d5 falling because the queen is, or the bishop.
Well, now the bishop, yeah.
So still a little bit of a tricky scenario for Carlsen, but
Carlsen's playing smart right
Carlsen
now.
is playing smart overall, and his resourcefulness has not been something he's lacked. I like that move f4.
So if I capture it, you're going to capture back, I guess, and there's some
But now I get
potential
d4, don't I, if I'm black? Why did Hikaru play e4? d4?
Yeah, his position is
okay,
bad.
he says he's going for this, though.
Queen c...
Ooh.
But the b3.
But who gets there first?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. It's really difficult.
King up, g6, king up, takes, king here.
King e2 went c4 and cut the king off.
So he has to play b3.
But now d3, I'm not sure.
No, g6 has got to be played to get the king. That's
so
what he goes for, but this
looks... Do I go to e4?
Yeah.
This
is a stuck
G3
position.
Now. G3.
G3 just picks up the pawn.
Oh, well, h4. Yeah, this is better, for sure.
It seems better for white, right? It seems like...
white is definitely ahead here.
He's just winning the king and pawning? That's surprising. Oh, he is, yeah.
King takes d4 even, just...
no,
nice.
even stronger. It wins Magnus.
Okay, so right now Hikaru has been winning at some point every game.
If you're looking at it from a match perspective, to keep this thing close, you're looking at a situation where what we've had is basically 3 games that should have been won by Nakamura.
Yeah.
He's won 2 of them.
Yep. So
Again, the issue is right here, right now. Are you going to keep blowing winning positions, or are you going to come back, Magnus? Are you going to show that you're on the board with Nakamura and bullet?
Right now, it's looked all Naka in the bullet portion. Exactly what most people predicted, that Magnus would be ahead after the 5 and 2. Actually, 5 and 3 minute portions, but here in the bullet, this is Hikaru's domain. He's shown his might, but he needs to get those full points because he's down by 4. He could be down by 2.
One funny thing is to look at their ratings. Both of these guys much higher rated than anybody else in bullet, 3,200, 3,100. But in a rare opportunity, Hikaru Nakamura actually has some chances to gain bullet rating points in one of these matches, because usually Hikaru has 0 chances, and right now he's doing the Hikaru bed bob. That's love potion number 9 for Hikaru right there. He's kind of doing, but what's happening?
Knight queen c4 is a problem. So knight.
Yeah, but he's just gonna. Knight takes a 4. You gobble? No, you build. You build.
Yep.
But Hikaru is in trouble here. I like bishop e3. I actually don't think Hikaru.
So knight takes f4. Is that a possibility? I was trying to work out the tactics. Knight takes f4 was a possibility. In fact, there's a great tactical sequence there that is very difficult to explain in very little time.
But that would have been interesting, yeah, if he had taken the point of everybody. It just undermines the protection of the knight there.
Well, it looked like you would lose. It's too difficult to explain.
Too much. But okay, so we stay in the moment.
I like.
Carlsen is up a pawn right now.
But the e4 pawn.
Yeah, but knight c4, you can't take it because I go to Forktown,
or you can. E3.
Ooh, you can.
But you can go bishop c5 perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Bishop to c5.
And then where does my queen go?
Just to e6?
So then you rook d6.
Bishop c5, rook d6, queen c8, and even when you move the knight, all your pieces are sort of, oddly overextended, and Nakamura is kind of agreeing with that.
That move, interesting, because now, if queen e4, g4 is also an idea. The knight is trapped on h5.
And that may still be something we see. Here it comes.
But watch out for, I was going to say bishop f8, but doesn't.
So many tactics, not enough time. These two guys are it's just bishop to f8 is an idea.
But then you take on f8 with a knight, right? There's a problem. Or even g takes h5, f6 to hang with check. All sorts of things.
Hikaru's a little frustrated here, you can see. But that's an interesting idea to try to get out of it. Not quite enough. He missed
that was
it.
a pain in the face.
And Hikaru recognizes that he miscalculated, but he doesn't give up. No, he does give up.
Yeah.
And just like that, Magnus strikes back, right? And just we have Magnus striking back. It is still 2-2 in the bullet portion. Nakamura not making enough headway with 17 minutes left in the total game clock, Nakamura is still down by 5 games. So mathematically, he's up against the wall right now.
Yes, he absolutely is. He needs to win this one, that's for sure, but he needs to win 2 in a row. That's the start. You can't. The problem is psychologically.
You can't keep trading blows at this point.
Absolutely not. But psychologically, it's like, oh, I need to win every single game. No. You need to win 2. That's what my number would be. 2 games. Once I'm back in it, then you can make progress from there. But you can't think I need to win 5 games in a row because that causes you to.
Well, I think it's caused him to lose focus when he's trying to convert on games at different points in this match. He's blundered away his chances, and Carlsen has been right there to accept those gifts and laid the traps. Again, that's what Carlsen does more than anybody, is create opportunities for his opponents to go wrong. People say they go wrong, but he's defending so resourcefully, playing such accurate chess like a computer, and you give your opponent opportunities to blunder.
Absolutely,
That's
and
what
right
happens.
now it looks very interesting. Hikaru trying to get that knight off the board, and so now they both have the 2 rooks Hikaru's trying to push his pawns, Magnus is trying to stop him. H5 is a risky move. I don't really like that at all, because that's going to become a vulnerability, and now, D5, once that pawn is committed to H5,
and if this queen gets in,
right now,
comes.
queen E5.
Yeah, here she comes.
Yeah, that was a weird decision. I don't quite comprehend it at all. Now knight F5 in some variations will be a
that's
threat.
a nice threat I didn't even consider.
Now H5 is just hanging. It's a free pawn. Knight G4.
Yeah, I think Magnus is a little bit unhappy with his decision to go for that idea as well, but it's still.
I mean, there's so many options here.
F3 might even be it's
Rook C2. That's smart. You don't.
But as long as there's no tactics, looks like there are no tactics.
Knight G4 that picks up the knight.
Knight G4 picks up the knight for free.
Yep. So Knight G4 game over.
Full for it.
Knight G4. Yep.
And Hikaru takes the time to consider it.
Queen F5 only move.
Okay,
Look,
so
Queen F5. I take. You take. I take. I get another pawn in the ending. It's
right.
Just,
and that'll be what we see is Zwischenzug. Ja, Gunsa. that was a Zwischenzug. In between move, everybody, for who doesn't speak German accent. That was a
Wait, why would he move his king that way? That seems like the wrong way to go. But okay, you take on D5, you take twice, A4, Rook D4, you hit the A pawn, A and H pawn.
No, you got to play Rook B3 here. But
Rook B3 is just smart.
And then you should be able to work that king in.
Yep. And
No diggity.
No, it's over.
You like the way I work it.
I keep saying it's over and then it's not over because that's how amazing Magnus is in
Magnus's
defense.
is Magnus Carlsen worthy.
But okay, a really great.
Magnus is almost playing as well as Magnus in this match.
All
right, so he's got a trick, Rook D4. That's his idea. So
sure,
but Hikaru says, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Time to push and go get a queen.
Yeah, and this is not an A pawn. A pawns are trickier because it's sometimes hard to work with. But now it's a B pawn, which means there's never going to be any drawing chance. And again, a bad strategy by Magnus to resign because there are 14 critical seconds.
He's focused on the fact that he's just playing chess right now. But from a match strategy perspective, he maybe could have milked another minute.
Yeah, I think he's being respectful, which is nice to see. When you play like this, you don't want to be disrespectful to your opponent and waste the time. But this is a critical match situation. Just under 14 minutes left.
Right.
Hikaru Nakamura down 4 games, and I hate these openings for black. So I would not be surprised if Magnus pulls this one out.
Hikaru needs to give up the Alekhine like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You can't play bullet openings against Magnus in bullet. I think he just has too much of a zoned-in focus where he gets the right theoretical edge.
Yeah, it's not even just it's not bullet 1-0 straight where Nakamura is an absolute animal. This is 1-1. There's a 1 second increment after every move, which means that even if you're up on time and your opponent's in trouble, they can actually accumulate some time back in the clock. And now B5 followed by C6 for white is just going to be really devastating for black to deal with. There's no attack. You don't have any G5, G4 stuff. Knight
As
H7.
you said, this is the problem. If you don't win 2 in a row, you don't come back in the match, and he's running out of opportunities. Whoa, look at Magnus just. The pawns are out of control.
I don't know how I feel about that one.
I love it.
If I go B takes C6.
I got knight B5 coming in.
If I go B takes C6, what exactly happens?
B7?
Whoa.
The knight's coming in.
What is going on?
Like Flynn.
Okay.
And I'm maybe being a little too trusting.
But look at this attack. White is moving all of the pieces away from the king side. Look at, like I said, an attack might find its way here. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like
queen is in perfect defensive
I don't
position.
know. I don't like that move. Pawn D6. What if I take it? Oh, knight D6 hits F7. Wait, but then bishop E6. I don't know. There's a lot of pins going on. I'm getting a little
Takes,
confused.
knight takes, bishop e6, blocks the queen's diagonal
Oh, but there was knight takes f7. What a tactic.
with a tempo on the queen.
I think.
Holy smokes. I don't know. I'm just going to take your word for it and try to keep up. Right now,
So-
Magnus is up on time a
so
little bit. He's sort of
D7
recovered from being down on time, and I think he's just going to take this one.
Yeah, what is going on here?
That just looks like a lot of pieces and not enough time if you're Nakamura.
Rook c5. Just take that bishop off. Game over. Okay, or queen e3 is obviously good enough.
Both
Yeah,
work.
this is game over. A4. Just push that pawn. It's over.
Where's the knight coming to?
Up, and now you trade queens by force and resign. There's no actually good reason to play. You're hurting your
Nakamura
chances.
needs to just resign and move on.
No, he's hurting his chances here, and he's back to a 5-game lead.
Yep. You only have 11 minutes left. I think that he's running. I think we can almost call the match at this point. Not to say Nakamura won't get on a run and win some games, but mathematically, Magnus Carlsen is running out of time to lose.
Yes,
He can't lose the match if there's no time left in the total clock.
With over 11 minutes left and 5-game deficit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, what was that opening choice? So ridiculously bad choice.
No, a terrible choice by Hikaru. Needs to stick with openings like this. He needs to stick with theory that works for him to outplay the world champion. But you can't. It's hard when you're so used to him bullet. He can play that against anybody else in the world and probably find a way.
Absolutely.
But not against Magnus.
No, against Magnus, you cannot just fool around with it because as we saw, and b4 to b5 to c6, like all these pawns just broke free so easily. And you're not going to play like that against him in a real game, obviously, and I understand it's bullet, but it's just so easy for Magnus to play. Here, this is a better decision for sure. Keep the tension alive, 8 pawns each. You can outplay him, but again, outplaying him is actually not exactly a great thing. You just want to crush him because of the time situation.
Right. And Magnus is happy with this. Is going to become a little bit of a positional affair here if White doesn't launch something on the king side, which is going to allow a lot of time to come off the game clock. And
so already you can win a pawn. You could have if you taken with the f pawn and take on d6 pawn was weak. But here you're just aiming for f4.
Right. Well, White's a little better here for sure, right?
Well, now there's a big problem.
D6?
Yeah, d6 is just hanging.
Pick up sticks? Take
But-
sticks?
Yeah, you get some weak pawns, which is annoying to deal with.
But the
so-
D file is, okay, he says, I'm not even going to allow this opportunity. We're going to gobble up.
Yep. No, it's
And
smart,
see
right?
what happens,
Because you
right.
take the pawn without compromising your pawn structure at all.
Right.
But that knight...
Very nice move.
Beautiful.
Yep. So he's forcing the D file to stay open by attacking the knight with the knight. And now this is a game only White can win.
Well-
We've said that before.
Yep.
But this is just a complete bind on the D file. White has complete control and is up a pawn. But how much time, right? How much time is going to come off the clock? We're up against it, right? You're in a situation where you must win every game and do so quickly.
Yep.
That's a nice move. He was baiting White into taking the H pawn, Magnus was, so that he could get the A2 pawn with the bishop.
Absolutely. So here, queen d2 might be an option just to get the... okay, but you want to keep the queens on the board.
So he's going to try to remaneuver that knight to a more opportune square.
Coming to f3.
Knight comes into f3, and then?
It hangs out for a while.
Okay. I think rook d2, I was going to say rook d2 at some point just to take care of the problem so you're not worried about this anymore.
Yeah.
But
Well, now h4 is hanging, right? So e5 and h4, so you're
Right,
losing
so-
a pawn.
Carlsen's definitely losing here, but this is just, we're in a situation where the match is, it's almost callable because of the total time left, and that's part of it. You're running up against the clock.
So trade all the rooks, knight c2, knight takes a3.
Right. He
completely
sees
winning.
exactly that, and it should be over. That bishop needs to be here to be trapping that knight,
Yep.
but he's not.
And even if it's there, it's still bad
Probably
because
still,
the king
yeah.
runs in. And look at
Right.
the h-pawn go now.
Right. Well, okay, so this is a game that is going to be won by White, but will Nakamura be able to win 2 in a row and pull off the unbelievable, we're running out of time where we can even say that.
And that bishop looks like it's in some trouble over there.
Maybe getting trapped.
Probably not, but still. King c3. Okay, king d3, same idea.
Time to bring the knight back into a square that helps something. Yeah, he's going to go after the... I thought he was going to go after the pawns over here.
Knight d6.
Magnus, just creating opportunities for his opponents to go wrong.
What?
Have I said this before? I have. He's just going to... got to play knight d6.
I will.
He wants to create an opportunity where he can win.
But he can't win because the king can always take on f4. Oh, well, actually bishop
What if
f1.
he gets it with the bishop?
So knight takes, knight d6, f3, knight e4. Okay, so b5 now. c6. C6.
I was thinking that this
over.
game was only being played out because Magnus was all of a sudden remembering match strategy, but
Yep.
I think Magnus was playing it out because he still had chances to win. That's an example of how things can go.
Yeah,
That's an example of how things can go wrong when you play Magnus Carlsen. I mean, I had thought that he might almost lose that game. That
so
was
now
insane.
it's a 4-game deficit with 7 minutes left.
Insane
That
in the
is-
membrane.
As long as Magnus uses all his clock, there's no way to catch up. However, for pride, for a little bit of prize money, if you win by winning every section, you do get a little bit more cash, right? So Hikaru does have an opportunity to win more cash, but also more importantly, to prove that he is the best bullet player, and that's important to him.
A hilarious Twitch comment. The next great Danny insult. That was just hilarious. He said he owed me his life because he was in a car crash in a coma. He heard me commentating and he woke up to turn it off. Love it. Hilarious.
Ridiculous.
Good stuff. Okay, so Hikaru Nakamura, you must know it's over at this point. I think he knows.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to stick around. We now have the post-match interviews coming up with Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura. We'll see what these two players think. Some big questions I think we got to start with are the, Hikaru's feelings on his inability to convert or not. How if he sees it the way we do, we'll let him say.
Yep.
I think the opening choice in the beginning that consistently repeated Nimzo and how if that was part of pre-match strategy or just something that he kind of fell into and then decided to abandon. From Magnus's perspective, I mean, where do we begin? Asking him how he is able to stay so cool-headed even under pressure. Like, where did he learn that? Is that like spiders are born knowing how to spin webs? I mean, what is the deal?
Yeah, he just really is just cool, calm, and collected, always very confident, very talented. I mean, that goes without saying. And yeah, it's a good question about the opening choice. Also, we've had very few draws. I think 3 draws.
I love that.
In
That's
this
just
match.
decisive chess that everyone can get behind.
Exactly, and so it's been fantastic to watch that. And look at Nakamura go with the black pieces. Where's that knight going?
Yeah, he should.
Bishop
Nakamura
takes e5.
Saves the day.
Yeah, but he's still going to be down at least a pawn, it looks
Right.
like. So queen g4, rook takes.
Nakamura is showing some good conversion here, if he can win this one.
Yeah, he's up.
But he's up a whole bunch on time. But we've seen him blow worse.
Yeah, but
So
he
we'll
takes
see.
d5. The problem is if you go rook takes, I go queen e6 and I defend my knight. So actually I'm just gaining another pawn this way.
Right.
Pawn d5, queen g4, pawn takes c4, d takes c4 that is, or queen takes e4 check, something. And black is up a lot of material. So
Well, Hikaru is
didn't consider that one for some reason.
a little bit of an intermezzo there, right?
So what now?
That was a little bit of a surprise. Not really something we can blame Hikaru for blowing there. Just again, resourceful defense by Magnus, but still under the gun. And black is still in a position where he should win this endgame, I think.
What?
Maybe not.
Well, he'll go up a pawn, but is that pawn enough? Rook d2, yeah, king's coming in.
Yeah. It's still strange to me, though. Hikaru is creating what? Why those pawns instead of advancing them more aggressively? I don't know.
So now king f6 to g7, they go f6.
He
Yep.
should even be able to walk in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think he's just winning if he almost went too far with the pawn. I think it would have been easier if he had started with the king earlier. Now Magnus is creating a little bit of a much harder way to win.
Yeah, this is so rook's coming to e4. But
Yeah,
then rook
that'll
a6.
offer the trade.
Rook
And,
b6, excuse me.
but still, I mean, this has just become a much harder position to win, and Hikaru has to get this win. The problem is it might take him another 2 minutes to do so.
Yeah, there's only 3 minutes left. It's actually impossible for him to win the match now.
Yep.
With 3 minutes left.
Logistically impossible.
Yep.
And may not even be able to win this position regardless. So he's going to create an opportunity where maybe the king can hide from checks, but it's still not enough. And Magnus has just defended again, time and time again. Amazing stuff. Something that you can tell your kids about. I saw Magnus Carlsen defend 72 lost positions.
Yeah, it's pretty
Grandpa, they didn't play 72 games. You don't know. You weren't there. I saw Magnus Carlsen.
Really just a fantastic.
Yeah, he just defends and defends and defends, and Hikaru offers the draw. No, he doesn't. He just shakes his head and says, I'm not happy. He's not happy. But you know what? He went against the best chess player in history,
Yep.
and Magnus did, I guess, what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And
looks like one more, maybe two more games
maybe
left.
two more if this game ends quickly. But Magnus Carlsen is going to win the match by 4, maybe 3 games.
Yeah, if you're Hikaru, you had some missed opportunities. He went down 9-4 at some point, and that was really way too much. He just blundered away some good positions. Granted, Magnus did the same at certain points, but it's clear that Magnus was playing exceptional chess, and Hikaru was just not on the form that we've been used to seeing in the GM Blitz battle. So,
Agreed, 100%. And pretty soon we will be talking to them about just that. Likely this is going to be the last game, and depending on the result, the final will be known, depending on the result. And we're going to see what they have to say. We got some great questions from the viewers. We got some great questions from our staff team. We're going to try to ask these guys, what the approach was, what the preparation was. We will try to get Magnus Carlsen to reveal his location as he prepares with his team of seconds for the World Championship match. And we will certainly ask them what music they've been listening to. These are the most important questions.
And we definitely have to ask if this is a confidence booster for him going into the match against Sergei Karyakin. And, to me it feels like it should be, but maybe he just really didn't put much stock into this and is much more focused on the championship.
Well, I think he wanted to beat Hikaru at his own game. I think he wanted to beat Hikaru where Hikaru is considered by many to be the world's best, and now we know that Magnus, he can play some online Blitz and Bullet too, even if he doesn't do it as often as the 4-time U.S. champion. We will see this happen again next year for sure. I already can't wait for next year's Grandmaster Blitz battle.
Absolutely.
If you can't tell, I'm already excited.
As the clock winds down with 30 seconds and counting, we are going to be excited for the next edition. There will be a next edition. Again, for this one, we have to thank once more our sponsors.
Absolutely.
Indigo Capital Partners, People Talk to RU, and Bureau and Venture Capital. And let's just see if Nakamura can end on a Ooh.
That's a trick.
That's a nice little trick there. It doesn't do much, but
just a big smoke and mirror, I guess.
Okay, but the end game is very tricky now.
Who's doing what?
I think
who and
black
where.
is better.
And just like that, the match is over. This game will count toward the total score, but the overall match is now come to an end. And we are about to talk to these players and see their thoughts on it.
So let's see. King F3, King
He's going to
D7,
take and
King
play
G4.
C4.
Can my king run to G6?
Offer a draw, and we're going to have a 4-game win in the final score of the match. Nakamura does win the bullet portion, but not by nearly enough to make it close. And
he's disappointed.
He's disappointed for sure.
And he's also losing.
Is he?
Right? Because
even if H3, there was just king back and shuffle.
King to E5. I have 2 tempi. Right? I have H3. So
I don't know.
They're just messing around with us. Uh-oh. No, the king ain't going anywhere there. But I'm confused. If the king went to E5, which it should, he will do that. Okay, now he goes to H3 because, wait a second.
What are you doing, Magnus?
He's having fun. This is hilarious.
Hikaru laughs to himself about it. What is he doing? Magnus smiles. I don't know what they're doing right now. What is he doing?
They're treating everyone to more chess, right? This is free.
Right.
It's overtime. It's free. we've already.
Hikaru is laughing about it too. It's just gonna. He moved the pawn. Notice that Magnus moved the pawn on move number 77, B6, which reset the 50 move rule, and everybody is happy to see more chess.
This is hysterical. These guys in a dead draw. Now it's not possible to win. Maybe he'll just move his king over and go pawn to B5. No, he's gonna go B5. He did it. He went B5. The match is far from over. This is amazing.
So Magnus just recognizes that there's no way. Yeah, but now it's officially a draw.
Look how much time they have
fine.
left. They have 57 seconds.
All right,
amazing.
Well,
that was amazing.
That was fun. And we're gonna get the players back.
That was phenomenal.
Right now, and see what they both have to say. We will. Hikaru's going to take a quick break, understandably so. We'll scoot over a little bit, give him a little more FaceTime. And as soon as Magnus and Hikaru are here, let us know when you can hear us, Magnus, if you've joined us.
Yeah, sure.
Hikaru has stepped away, so I guess we're going to start with you. Congratulations, first of all, on a very, very well-played match. Obviously, you won, so you got to be happy about that. Obviously, it's the biggest match you'll play this year, right? I had to. So tell the fans the number one question we've been waiting for. What was the choice of music?
You told me to reply something like Taylor
You can't
Swift.
tell them what we talked about.
So I'll say
it wasn't Taylor Swift? That's what you're saying?
There was one Taylor Swift song.
There was
which
one
one?
Taylor Swift.
Which one?
Love Story.
Shake It Off, maybe?
Love Story. Baby, just say yes.
All right, well, obviously, whatever you were listening to, it worked, and we're glad to know there was at least one Taylor Swift song in the mix. So we're going to start with you. Hikaru has joined us back again, but we're going to ask you, so you were under a lot of pressure, at least from our perspective. You seemed to just be resourceful and when it counted, and there were some games that you held on to win that we thought Hikaru really had you up against the wall. So how are you able to stay so calm? Is that like spiders being born, able to spin webs? What is your approach in those positions where you're under time pressure and just resourcefully hanging on?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Try to keep calm. To the extent that I can.
Yeah.
I guess that's it. I mean, in some games I did not manage that, but in many I did, and it is hard to win games when your opponent is resisting well.
Yeah, and you create a lot of opportunities for your opponent to go wrong, and it seemed that Hikaru, now that you're back, it's felt like you struggled a little bit converting on some games that I know you probably wish you had back. Is that how you saw it? We felt like maybe there were opportunities missed, both in the 5-minute portion and then to start the bullet. Did you have a hard time with not being able to convert on those?
I mean, yeah, I think there were a couple critical moments. I mean, I think the first critical moment was the Nimzo game, where I think I was just losing, but then I got this bishop to c4, and when I put this bishop h4 move, I think if I had gone bishop d5 and rook g1, if I win that game and I get back in the match, then anything happens. But no, I mean, I think my chances were in the 5-minute. The 3-minute, yeah, maybe I had chances, but I mean, I didn't think I had much there. I mean, it was in the 5-minute where it really got away from me.
Right. Now, on that note, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on what my next question was.
How does online Bullet and Blitz compare for you guys compared to over-the-board Bullet and Blitz?
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, I think okay, Bullet, obviously you can't play good bullet chess over the board. I mean, that's impossible. So obviously online it's much better, but I don't know. I think for Blitz it's not so different. I mean, at least for me, I think it's pretty similar. I mean, not a big difference.
How about you, Magnus?
I agree that it's very hard to play bullet over the board. Much easier online, especially when it's 1-1. That's a very different animal compared to 1-0, of course. And Blitz, I don't think there's too much of a difference to over the board.
Do you feel like the increment in the format helped you kind of make that transition? I think that Hikaru is known as playing more online Blitz and Bullet than yourself. Do you feel like the increment in Bullet helped you against Hikaru?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when it's without increment, you have to focus mostly on making moves. While I mean, with 1-1, it's still time to think. So that certainly helped me.
Were you aware that you were up +5 heading into the bullet portion?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the score all the time. So
right. So did that change your overall match strategy? Did you, or were you just still taking one game at a time, just letting the clock run away?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to use a bit of time between games and before resigning and such. I don't know. I thought that was just good match strategy.
Right. So you did have an overall kind of meta strategy once you knew you were ahead to play the games out.
Sure.
Right, makes sense. Next question we actually had was, where? I know you may not answer this directly, but do you know where are you playing from currently, and are you involved in World Championship preparation?
Yes, I'm in the Caribbean, and I'm definitely preparing for the World Championship.
Do you think that a match like this, even with it being such a crazy, obviously very very different format, do you think it helps to just put yourself to the test with all the blitz and tactics?
Yeah, I mean, sure, training games always help. So in that sense, it was double the money's worth.
Right, double the money's worth. Well, Hikaru, the last question we had was kind of a specific chess one. You started out playing this line in the Nimzo, which you repeated several times. Was there a reason you went away from that? Obviously, the results maybe weren't there, but it felt like toward the end you were starting to get some good positions.
You mean knight g2?
Yeah. That was.
I mean, I think you might be confusing that with Queen's Indian. I mean, I thought I got pretty bad positions in the Nimzo, and I got decent or good positions in the Queen's Indian. But
okay.
Okay. I mean,
I'm referring to the opening you
obviously
played. Yeah, where you had the bishop h4 tactic.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but that game I was also completely lost. You know, I mean. But then the 5 minute, I mean, I think it was very up and down. I mean, Magnus lost this game with white that he never should have lost, and then I blew that second game as well. But you know, it was all. I mean, I don't think. I mean, after the 5 minute, I wouldn't say that I really had a chance. Maybe if I kept the 3 minute close, but okay. I mean, I was just trying to play something different because obviously at some point you have to also start trying to win with black as well. I mean, in a normal match, I mean, you have more time to adjust, but when you're playing 3 hours straight, I mean, you kind of have to just adjust on the fly. So I mean, I tried it. Okay, I mean, especially in the 3 minute, it was wasn't so good.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I guess Magnus, a question everyone wants to know is how much preparation did you put into this match in particular?
Taking away from your preparation for Sergey.
Not too much really. I mean, we actually planned on preparing some openings for this one, but it never really materialized.
Do you think that your preparation for Sergey helped you in this? I mean, obviously it's a quicker format, but helped you going into this match against Hikaru?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have been playing a lot of training games the last weeks, so that certainly helped me today.
Right. So, getting toward the last questions here, we had record-breaking viewership. No surprise, you guys are both a pretty big draw. The final numbers are not in, but we were around 30,000 live viewers at once. No idea how many total unique viewers saw this match. And so, as a general question, as Chess.com and websites try to create opportunities for the fans to see you guys up close on webcams, you guys are even more animated than you would be in an over-the-board classical game, which is really fun. And this opportunity for the fans to see you guys play so many games back to back. What do you feel? How do you feel this kind of future helps the overall growth of chess on a global level? How would you compare a match like this to classical World Championship chess in terms of the importance of bringing in new fans?
You want me to answer, Magnus?
Yeah, go ahead, Hikaru.
I mean, okay, I think for the serious chess player, of course, there's nothing that can compare to the World Championship match. I mean, it is the biggest event by far. So from that standpoint, I mean, of course, new people will be interested, but when you have games that go 7 hours, you know, it's also difficult for non-chess fans. But I think, I mean, the big advantage to online chess or playing Blitz is that you can just keep going, you know, for a couple hours straight, and then it's over, you know, like tennis or something. I mean, you don't have 7-hour games probably in any other sport. So I think it's a good thing. I mean, I hope there were a lot of people who followed it, and I mean, I think it's a good event to see what happens in the future.
What do you think, Magnus? I mean, we know this was the most important match of your life, but I already put you on the spot with that. So what do you think about the format and how it relates to bringing in new fans?
Well, I mean, as a player, it's definitely very interesting to play. It's fun to play Blitz and Bullet, and yeah, I think for the viewers, it's wonderful, both for ardent chess fans and new chess fans.
You went out of your way to really draw out that last game, and you kind of gave us a fun smile there. So what was that about? Well, you were just making sure the fans got all their money's worth for this free show?
No, I'm sorry about that, but I didn't know how much time was left. So
we loved it.
We loved it. We were. I'm not asking.
I thought it was just good match strategy to draw the game.
It was awesome.
Well, I guess from our perspective, we knew the match was over, so we were kind of laughing and thought that you were making sure the fans got entertained. So, well, we were entertained thoroughly. We just finished what was our Super Bowl at Chess.com, the entire Grandmaster Blitz Battle Championship tournament, and we look forward to the Super Bowl of chess coming up in November. We wish you the best of luck, Magnus. We will certainly be doing this again next year, and look forward to both of you guys playing. And if you guys want, we can play some Bug House or something.
Well, thanks a lot for that.
Yeah, I mean, just the offer's out there whenever you're ready. I'll let you be my partner. But seriously, thank you very much, Magnus. We'll let you get back to it. Much appreciated, Hikaru. Great chess. Thank you for being here, making it all the way to the finals, and awesome stuff. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day, guys.
Yeah, bye.
And just like that, we
Wow.
it's all over.
Yeah, it's kind of tearjerker. It's bittersweet, that finale.
I know, because I don't want it to end.
But that was, fantastic to watch.
That was fantastic. Well, I'm honestly just so impressed by how good Magnus Carlsen is.
I am as well, but it's so interesting because the score, in some sense, is a little misleading. I really felt like there were moments where Hikaru could have, kind of iced some games better. He just really let Magnus stay in for way too long. And we see these kind of scores, +4 for Magnus in certain matches, against Vishy Anand. I think the first World Championship match won by 3 games. It was very clear 3 games. He just was beating Vishy for the most part. But here it just felt like Nakamura left points on the table. I'm not saying he should have won the match or anything like that. I do think Carlsen played better and should have won. But the 4-point spread, we didn't anticipate it, but I think Fabiano Caruana did.
That's true. Fabiano called it amazingly, although he, I think he predicted Magnus would win the bullet portion. I guess in the end, Hikaru did win the bullet portion, but not by enough, and time just ran out. But I agree with you. It was amazing to see, and I think it was closer than that. I think that it's hard to imply, and you don't want to put words in the player's mouth there. Obviously, Hikaru was upset. Magnus is happy regardless, but I think that Hikaru knows he let a couple points stay on the table, and it's not to say he would have won the match, but if you're within a couple games, it feels a lot better when there's 10 minutes left than being down 5 games.
Yes.
And but that's how these matches are played. That's why it's fast-paced and in your face. It's designed to really put them to the test. You got to recover, and you got to keep it going. And I don't even know what else. I don't want to end the show today.
I have a few more things to say, I guess.
Go for it.
One is, where in the Caribbean is Magnus Carlsen?
Right. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Where is Magnus Carlsen hiding out there? We do hope he's preparing well for Sergei Karyakin. That's a question I have. Do you think Sergei was watching? Was his challenger, Sergei Karyakin, watching the show, trying to find some flaws maybe in Magnus's thinking in certain games? It's possible.
It's hard to imagine that because there really are no flaws. But no, obviously Hikaru proved he could outplay Magnus, and he did so on several occasions. But a loss of focus in converting on those wins. Or just it wasn't his day. I don't know how you look at it from that perspective. I think that every time we thought it was about to go totally away, he would win a game or two and keep it close. But Magnus was in the driver's seat from the start. He's a monster. It just, if you're Hikaru Nakamura, that's just it's just so tough, right?
Yeah.
And we know their overall record over the board, and now Magnus Carlsen is the reigning Grandmaster Blitz Battle champion.
Yep.
I expect he will be playing in next year's event, defending his title. We obviously have some organizational work to do there. We can't announce anything yet, but awesome possum.
Yeah.
I don't even know what else to say. Let's give another shout out to our sponsors right here above us, Indigo Capital Partners. People talked at RU Bureau and Venture Capital. They jumped at the opportunity, and we were just so thankful.
Yes.
And it really wouldn't have been possible without them. And this was the most viewed online chess match certainly we've ever done. Who knows what the World Championship numbers will be, but This was more than a ton of fun.
And one last shout I want to give as well is to the participants, all 8 of them.
All of them.
You know, of course, we had Magnus Carlsen beating Hikaru Nakamura in the final, but let's not take anything away as we pull the bracket up. If we
Yep. If
have
I
that
have that, I'm not even sure if I do, but I will try to find it.
Yeah, so the point is that over the course of the quarterfinal, semis, and now the final, we had players, Grandmaster Pantalahari Krishna, we had Tigran Petrosian, who in fact won the qualifier just to face Magnus. We had
Right.
Alexander Grishuk, Maxime Vacher-Lagrave, Levana Ronin, and Fabiano Caruana, all trying to get to this last spot here. And as we go over the prize fund one last time, well, Magnus takes home at least 4,000, split by win percentage another 4,000, so he's going to get quite a payday.
Right.
Hikaru 2,000 plus whatever his percentage is, and potentially the best game. I mean, we have not decided what the best game is. We're trying to take it all in. But for me, one of the cool games that we saw was when he played that kind of quiet line against the Berlin, and then outplayed Magnus along the way, and then checkmated him with Queen E8 checkmate. So,
Right.
You know,
It was was it the only game that ended in checkmate on the board? It was one of them.
I
Yeah.
think it was.
That was one of the better ones. I think Magnus's initial win in the 5-minute after losing the 960, that night end game.
Yeah.
That was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So we got some things to review to decide on who takes that extra $1,000 cash home. We know these guys need the money, so we'll make sure we take our time to really dive into that. And there are still 14,000 of you here, so like all of us, I guess you guys just don't want to go away. And just appreciative of everybody being here. Thank you so much. Thank you to our sponsors. We got to call this thing at some point. Tell your friends about chess and the future of us, as it's the greatest esport on the planet. And you can visit chess.com/bracket to see the final bracket. You guys are just awesome. Magnus was awesome. Hikaru was awesome. Didn't quite go the way I predicted.
Oh
but,
yeah, where's the happy Matt? I think that's the last thing we have to. I think the last thing we have to do for the fans before we sign off.
In the end, we came prepared for whatever would happen. So I will let you hold this one, and I will definitely give Magnus his due.
Yeah,
happy Magnus.
Sad Hikaru, unfortunately. So
you know what? But everybody got their money's worth. So we're all winners. This is really just a big T-ball game.
Yeah.
We all get a trophy and we all get ice cream.
Well, speaking of ice cream, I'm hungry. I don't know about you.
I'm starving. And the real winner, as we all know, is
the fans.
The fans. That's right. So the real winner is Sergei Karyakin in the end. You know? He's resting.
Yep.
Thank you everybody for watching, and we could keep this going forever, but it's time to sign off and give you all our best wishes. Peace out to the people.